Sam Seder here. This is the live broadcast of the Majority Report. And as you probably have heard, there's a bit of a YouTube apocalypse that has been going on. Many news and politics channels have lost their advertising because of an algorithm that Google has implemented as a function of ads showing up on hate-filled channels. Well, we got caught up in that, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved. So we need your help. You've probably heard from other channels that they're asking people to donate to a Patreon site. We are asking the same so that we can operate this YouTube feed without a cost to us. I mean, we don't look at YouTube as a huge revenue maker for us, but we need your help so that we're not losing money on it. So head over to our Patreon site. Here is the URL. We need your help. Just a couple of bucks, $2-3 a month would really help us out. Thanks so much and enjoy the show. Hi, folks.
Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Monday, June 5th, 2017. My name is Michael Brooks, and I'm Michael Monday, and this is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially-ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America. Downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Ben Mankiewicz, Turner Classic Movies, The Young Turks, Man About Town. We're talking about the 2018 Republican strategy. Well, it takes a leaf from the Gianforte playbook, attack the media. Apparently, the 2018 referendum is not going to be on a mentally unstable president, a spiraling out of control world, attempting to take away your health care. No, it's going to be about the press, which has hurt their fifis. That and Donald Trump's very, very classy and very strategic response to the terrorist attacks in London. All that and more of Ben Mankiewicz. Jeremy Corbyn making the link between austerity and the undermining of the UK's national security. It's a brilliant move as he continues to close in on the zombie Tory party. Can he pull off a upset? We'll certainly be hoping so. Saudis and Gulf states cut off relations with Qatar, charging that despite the fact that Qatar is actually involved in proxy wars against Iran, they're actually secretly plotting with Iran. But there's other reasons as well. Conflicts over Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. We'll get to that. Iraqi civilians, dozens, perhaps hundreds of civilians dead in Mosul and fighting in that city to take back control of that area from IS. Also reports of use of white phosphorus in that conflict. A prominent African-American political scientist and writer has had to cancel a tour because of threats on her life. Where are the free speech and open idea brigade people? Oh, I guess they're only interested when it's fascism, neo-eugenics, boring, pedestrian, pseudo-intellectualism on Islam. Bill Maher, yeah. As the Turk said to Tom Hagen in The Godfather, the Don is slipping. Not only stepping in it with a really stupid racial joke, just dude is not really funny anymore. If he ever really was. And a Flint official has to resign after blaming the contamination of that city's water supply on its black residents. And of course, he didn't use the phrase black residents. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Let's take... Actually, I want to do something shorter than the Sinclair broadcasting clip, because that's a bit long. Sorry? Oh, that's from Mankiewicz. Okay, great. Let's actually do this. This is a really disgusting piece of sound. This is a guy, Phil Stair, who is the sales manager of the Genesee County Land Bank in Flint, Michigan, has had to resign after water activists took a recording of him saying this, warning if children are around, they're about to hear a disgusting word from a massively disgusting human being. Here it is.
Well, Flint has the same problems as Detroit. Fucking niggers don't pay their bills. Believe me, I deal with them.
There you go. There is a water crisis that was engineered by the state government that has poisoned Flint's water, that has caused a ongoing public health catastrophe in a already economically ravaged and terrorized city. And this local bank manager, well, he knows what the problem in Detroit is. It's that effing N-words don't pay their bills. Believe me, I have to deal with them. So it's disgusting. He resigned, but another window into the heart of the modern Republican soul.
Record a racist is a good policy. Anytime you hear somebody talking like that, turn that phone on. Get good at maybe surreptitiously turning on the recorder.
Yeah, sit back and let them talk. See what's on their minds. It's going to be something like that. On the complete opposite, Matt, I'm sorry, we always ask you this, but how long have you been on the MeUndies train?
Since 2011.
Jesus.
The summer.
You see, each time you say it, you get cockier.
Well, because everyone always thinks, everyone says he's been on it for 3 years. No, it's been since 2011.
2011 isn't 3 years. I'm bad at math. I'm just kidding. Pride starts on the inside, so celebrate yourself like super producer Matt does. And I will say myself, although I am much later to the game than him. So celebrate yourself with MeUndies. MeUndies makes the ultimate feel-good undies with free shipping right to your door. Satisfaction guaranteed. Designed in L.A., every pair of MeUndies is made with what's that, Matt? Modal. A fabric 3 times softer than cotton. Their soft, stretchy undies come in an ever-changing array of colors and patterns. No matter what your style, they've got something for you. That's because MeUndies believes in people feeling good and being themselves, which is why MeUndies is putting their money where their underwear is during Pride Month. For every pair of special edition Celebrate undies you buy during Pride, MeUndies will donate $1 to Los Angeles LGBT Center. That's great. And as if you need another reason to try MeUndies, they're offering 20% off of your first pair and a satisfaction guarantee that you'll love them or your money back. Just visit MeUndies.com/majority. Head to MeUndies today and pick up a pair of special edition Celebrate undies. You not only get a discount on awesome undies, you'll be donating to an amazing cause. Check out MeUndies.com/majority today. That's MeUndies.com/majority today. And are you hiring? Maybe you're a bank in Flint that needed to get rid of a racist. Or maybe you run any number of great businesses that listen to this show. There's actually a lot of small business people in our audience, as well as people who do recruiting for all sorts of outfits. So are you hiring and know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Finding great talent can be tough. Thankfully, with ZipRecruiter, you can post your job up to 100-plus job sites with just one click. Then their powerful technology efficiently manages the right people to your job better than anyone else. That's why ZipRecruiter is different Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you, it finds them. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates for immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. And one more time, try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. And I have one other great place to tell you about. That's Texture. With everything going on in the world, it can be hard to keep up with all the latest political moves and perspectives, to say the least. Moves and perspectives, yes. That's why I love the Texture app. It's an app that lets me read trusted sources. You know, I always mention them, whether it's a person like Matt Taibbi following their work across all threads, or Fast Company. Sometimes there's a great report in Newsweek, all in the convenience of my own phone. With over 200-plus magazines available, Texture puts an endless supply of in-depth interviews and articles into the palm of your hand. And, I mean, Texture really is great for managing the information flow and certainly helping me, do this job, obviously, the range, and also get me out of this job. As I mentioned, I do look at, Fast Company, Wired. Sometimes I do look at Yoga Journal. It's great. It's everything you need. And thanks to Texture's daily recommendations and inclusive interactive features, you can easily pinpoint the articles that you want to read. Plus, Texture is searchable, so you can mark what you like. Check out old issues or view bonus video content seamlessly. Everything from National Geographic to Fast Company to Rolling Stone is available for way less in the Texture app, which is selected as one of Apple's top 2016 iPad apps. Texture is normally $9.99 a month, but you can sign up right now at Texture.com/majority. Get a 14-day free trial. That's 14 days to try Texture for free when you go to Texture.com/majority. That's Texture.com/majority. We will be right back with Ben Mankiewicz on the Majority Report.
Kill me. Yeah. Can't kill me again. If you never kill me, you're brave. Yes, and we say, Jah over evil, life over death. Demon can't kill me again. Me say, good over evil, life over death. Satan can't kill me. Here comes the hot stepper. Fire burning hotter than paper. That song you written proper than later. Protected from the crown of my head, straight down to the very soul of the crepe, yeah. Me have a chat for them send gunshot poison, yeah, accident. Long time them a try lock off my oxygen, but Jah in control, can't take me soul. Jah over evil, life over death. Demon can't kill me again. Me say, good over evil, life over death. Demon can't kill me. Them put poison in a liquor, try curse me. A good thing, me no drink, me no thirsty. From the day my mother birthed me, Selassie I hurt me, nobody can hurt me. Them disguise Jezebel in a the biggest way. Send her come to give me the biggest aid. Can it say far in dismay? A long time them a try up until this day. Me say, good over evil, life over death. Satan can't kill me again. Me say, Jah over evil, life over death. Me say them can't kill me again. Can't kill me again. If you never kill me, I'm ready. Whoa. Alright, them did one. Move me for your part, me bet me dead. But unfortunately them never know say Jah want me set the trend. Fi come step on snake and 40 leg. Good over evil, life over death. Demon can't kill me again. And me say, yeah, Jah over evil, life over death, demon can't kill me again. And me say, good over evil, life over death, demon can't kill me. Yeah, come on, copy and base. Long time. Yes,
Welcome back to the Majority Report. I'm Michael Brooks. Joining us now is my pal Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies and the Young Turks. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm well. Pal seems a little too friendly, but okay. We know each other.
Oh, all right. A very distant acquaintance who I was trying to make feel comfortable in this format, but fine. Benjamin.
No, we're pals. It's good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's good to talk to you. So I want to start. We'll get to the press stuff in a minute, but I just want to. And is there a way you can move away from? Is there some type of dish situation going on?
Yeah, there's a dish situation going on, which I am.
Is there a way to extricate yourself from that, pal?
Yeah, there's a way to extricate myself from that.
Thank you.
Hang on.
Like a guy comes out and he says we're not pals, but then he's like on the phone with me, like we're like making plans
cool
for dinner.
Is it cool if I do the dishes during this interview? Is that a problem? Yeah.
I think that there's mixed reactions to that in the studio. Yeah, sure, whatever. You're assaulting my eardrums. Ben, before we get to this wider press story with Trump, we just have to touch on, I'm going to get into the actual attacks in London in the second half of the show and really actually the brilliant and opportunistic way that Jeremy Corbyn is exploiting them, which I'm very excited about and approve of thoroughly. But can we just reflect on the second that, and we'll get it up in a second, Trump's first tweet to Sadiq Khan. We have that right, Matt? Where basically what Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, said was there's no need to be alarmed. And he meant this in the context of there's heightened police presence on the street, but everybody stay calm. And Donald Trump tweeted, pathetic excuse by London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who had to think fast on his no reason to be alarmed statement. MSM is working hard to sell it. Now, Ben, I don't know that we're the MSM, but can we work hard to sell it together, please?
Yeah, let's work hard.
Yes.
Let's work hard to sell it, yeah. It's, I've reached a point. First of all, I am at the risk of, it's not a risk, it would be oversharing, but I've started taking anxiety medicine most nights to sleep.
Wow.
And I'm trying to figure out, there's nothing going on in my personal life that needs dramatic attention, no more than usual.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ben, I don't want to be palling with you here, but really?
I just want to be held, Michael, and I don't understand. We've been married for 5 years. It doesn't seem. No, I think it's world anxiety, and I get. And I was watching a bunch of interviews of people on the left interviewing people this week, and the whole thing made me tremendously anxious. And this fits into that. This is and it's hard to know where to put this. Here you are on a Monday, and you're hosting the show, and and I'm not entirely sure why this is any bigger news than 137 other things before it. But it is. It's certainly as big. He continues to prove himself unstable, mendacious, and disinterested in the world and how things work. The other story out today, just that McMaster and Tillerson and Mattis, the men on whom we're relying for our safety, all were assured that he was going to mention Article 5 when he spoke to NATO.
Right.
And they learned as he made the speech that he himself had removed it.
Right.
He's a guy who doesn't get how the world works. And so So yeah, here's an opportunity as an attack in our closest ally, and he sees the value in essentially inserting himself in it as if it's an attack here and scaring people here, and as a bonus at the same time, ridiculing a Muslim.
Right.
It works on a lot of levels for Donald Trump.
It works on a lot of levels. I mean, look, I guess there's sort of three lanes to take with this. I used to say tracks, now I say lanes, but I think that and I don't think that there's always value in still reiterating the fact and acknowledging the fact that, yes, this guy as a personality is obviously uniquely mentally and emotionally and psychographically unsuited to be where he is. I mean, he's unsuited to be in any position of authority. I wouldn't want him managing a regional fast food chain. So there is that, and I think that a lot of this stuff does come down to just, rage, resentment, aggression, and sense of incredibly short-term plays. Like, as I think even stepping out of the Paris Accords, he campaigned on it. He said, I'm definitely going to do it. And then there was a several-month-long lag, clearly because, he was sort of mixed minds about it. And then what happened was he went to Europe, and Macron beat him in a handshake contest, and Angela Merkel said he was a punk, and he was livid. So there you go. Steve Bannon's wing gets the win. But I think the bigger points that I want to sort of address, is that we'll get to the Republicans in a second, but there is still been this desire, and we hit this note a lot, but I think it's important to keep hitting it, that people from, Fareed Zakaria to Bob Schieffer, to many other people who supposedly are sophisticated would search for moments, whether it was a speech where he just read the teleprompter and seemed, actually by my standards, still totally not coherent, just, right-wing claptrap, or even going and doing a sort of, errant and non-strategic bombing of Syria. They were looking for these moments of and this happened throughout the whole campaign. Now he's the nominee. Maybe he'll stop being racist. Now he's the president. He'll grow into this job. And it was this incredible delusional wish against reality, which is really dangerous because this is who we're dealing with. And it's kind of like the press first was not able to make a distinction between, when the Republicans lie about their numbers, it's, 2 + 2 = 500 million. And then when Democrats lie about their numbers, it's 2 + 2 = 6.5, right? And those are the same thing. And now it's gotten down to, this search for anything to make this normal. And I'm just wondering, are they ever going to accept that it's not?
I don't know. I think with a Gallup poll at 36, I think there starts to be consistent polling under 35. You start seeing 33s, 32s, the 30. George Bush at the 20. Each point drop when we get to 35, if it's consistent, because there's still some polls that'll have him at the low 40s. So we're averaging, around 38 or 39 now. But that average starts hitting 35 and below. With each point, that'll represent some 6.3 congressional or state house Republicans, right? Who will think, okay, it is to my political advantage to say what I've probably already been thinking. If we assume there's some sanity in something.
Nah, that might be too generous.
Right, I got it. But for some who just think, okay, it becomes advantageous to me to step away from him and criticize him. Everything is politics, and as he continues to lose support and political power with it, I suspect that's the only way that will happen. I have, my crystal ball is shattered and in pieces on the floor, and my kid is cutting her feet on it.
Have you talked to your therapist about that?
I got nothing. Say what?
Have you talked to your therapist about that?
Yeah. You could probably sweep your floor. You've got a small child.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. I've given up trying, but the numbers are moving down, and he acts like a lunatic, and legitimately a guy who needs to be calmed down, a guy who needs to needs to be drugged and sedated, at least at times. And so that's when Republicans will start to peel away, if they're ever going to. My fear is
I don't think so.
Is a bigger picture fear. I think that'll happen a little. My fear is what happens when they do start to pull away, and that same instinct that has Zakaria and Schieffer and those people who and who have had moments where they've uttered those foolish words. Van Jones too, right?
Yep.
This is when he becomes president.
Oh God.
We are so desperate. It's true among my friends who don't follow politics, who are alarmed but say, "Oh, John McCain, Susan Collins, and Ben Sass, Jeff Flake. These guys they're going to keep crazy things from happening." Right? And I think, I don't know where you're from or what you've been doing the last 20 years, but okay. But we'll settle for anything that isn't Trump afterwards, and in our desire for normalcy, and that the revolution, again, the revolution ends with a. I think I've said this before to you, but the revolution ends with Mike Pence running against Evan Bayh in 2020.
That is a truly stomach churning and disgusting thought. But I think you're right. Although here are some of the complications in that, and we'll get to the Republican press strategy. I think that overall Trump is still enormously popular with Republicans because let's really and if you look at focus groups with supporters of his. They'll randomly say things that don't make it, they're like, well, I like what he's doing, but I don't like him on Twitter, which, sounds nonsensical, right? I think what we have to deal with is that, of course, and there are the unique things to Trump as just an unstable and unhealthy personality, of course. On the other hand, it's benefited us in some ways because if they were more disciplined and together, they would have already, the make America poorer, sicker, dumber agenda would be moving much faster, right? Like the day they're going into healthcare markup in the Senate is the day he fires Comey, and then we're all of a sudden back into this melodrama. So in some ways, he's actually kind of halted some of the damage, although, they're moving forward quite nicely on a lot of, social, environmental damage and everything else. But I think we have to deal with the fact that this is what the Republican base wants. I think that it's not even just the policy set. They do want some version of a guy who, quote unquote, speaks his mind. We saw, Greg Gianforte assaulted a reporter. And I remember, and I don't know the way the numbers worked out, but when I first saw that, I said, I wonder if this helps solidify his turnout. That was my first thought, right?
Sure.
And now, you look at this report that the GOP's 2018 election strategy, which is reported in McClatchy, is going to be built around attacking the media. It's going to be a referendum on essentially the press being unfair to Republicans. And I just want to quote, because this is a kind of darkly hilarious line. The strategy doesn't mean literally fighting the media, the strategist interview. The strategist interviews say they don't want their candidates imitating Republican candidate Greg Gianforte, who last month was charged with assaulting a reporter in Montana. But the aftermath of that incident was instructive for party strategists. Conservative media figures such as Laura Ingraham and Brent Brozell didn't rush to condemn Gianforte, and they criticized the reporter. The ensuing coverage, according to one Republican watching the race, energized GOP voters. So at the same time that we might think, and again, stopping crazy things from happening, I don't think any Republican, maybe Susan Collins, just because of the state she represents, but, they're all committed to doing plenty of destructive and crazy things like kicking millions of people off of Medicaid. I mean, that's a horrific, crazy thing to do. But it seems like the party is doubling down. If they double down on that media strategy, a lot of that is still going to be built around protecting Trump, saying the media is being unfair to him. You see Lindsey Graham and other supposedly, quote unquote, sane people using Russia hearings to just run interference for him. So, how does that strategy match with we can start to consciously decouple from this crazy guy?
It may make it impossible, and it may make it harder. That may be a subtle attempt to make it harder for the Republicans that I was talking about if that number dips to 35, which I've randomly picked. But
Right.
probably not a bad number to pick of when Republicans start to legitimately panic. That may be a way to guard against them abandoning the party.
Mm-hmm.
That hey, look, the way we support you in your reelection bid is by doing the exact same things that energized our party in 2016. But as you know, like they've now put it into they've now had a meeting at the RNC and turned it into a strategy. But it's been a strategy since Rush Limbaugh got on the air.
Right.
To say that the press is a bunch of leftists and they can't be trusted. And Fox has been saying it. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they're leftists. They can't be trusted. That professor teaching your kid at Indiana State University, he's a leftist and he can't be trusted. And the scientists, those people, they're leftists and they can't be trusted.
Right.
You take the sort of the people who know the most about the given issue that we're talking about and tell them that they can't be trusted. And then we really shouldn't have to take long to figure out what is if not the only, but it's not the only, but what is certainly a significant reason in why we're so uninformed in this country and why crazy stories land. The right has successfully, with some media complicity, definitely, certainly television media complicity, has successfully turned us into a country where we don't believe what the press says. So it's pretty easy. I only wonder whether they're tapped out on it. You know, whether now that idea is just, you know, baked in among Republican voters, and that the whole strategy of running against it, you know, I don't know that you're gonna win anybody else. But I don't know. You don't need to win that many anybody else. They own Congress. They own the Senate. The Senate landscape is tough for Democrats, and they own, 33 state houses, you know?
And they also have, very robust and aggressive forms of voter suppression, which you always need to talk about, I think, when we talk about this. But my question for you, Ben, and you might know this better than me, is I'm assuming you do. Do you think, though, that the difference is that when this stuff, and I guess arguably too, in some ways it goes even back to to Nixon, and there was always this kind of like right wing demonizing of the press, but even when this stuff started to bubble up in the 90s, and there was this whole architecture of direct mail and talk radio, and it was its own ecosystem and its own business and its own world, but it still seemed like, and then it culminated in Fox, but it seemed like what was happening then was like, we're going to get so aggressive and so robust that we will bully the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, whatever, all the, mainstream outlets. We're going to bully them into, covering a baseless Clinton scandal. We're going to bully them into, giving equal weight to climate change denial, or, covering someone like Newt Gingrich as a visionary versus the just sort of like pseudo-intellectual predator that he is. Now it seems like, because of the way media is so bifurcated, like there's very few outlets left that are really like the national source. Obviously there's different, of course, ABC, New York Times. There's legacy establishment media that has a very big reach, but even we are, and in some ways this has been a great, progress in terms of proliferation of voices. But like a guy like Alex Jones, to me, it doesn't seem like they're not trying to make the quote unquote mainstream press reflect their perspective. They're trying to cannibalize it for their own self-sustaining business venture. And that seems like a little bit of a different thing, because it's one thing to say, like the Bush and Cheneys were lying to and working with complicit reporters to manipulate a very compliant and failed mainstream media, if we're being honest about things like invading Iraq. But with Trump, it's like, well, that's fake news. Let's go talk to some, Twitter troll who will spread a rumor for us. And that's
right.
A different incentive structure.
It's changed so dramatically. I'm not sure there's a solution for it. I'm not sure this is just what we're going to live with, and this is going to be the situation when you and I die, right? Do we somehow think that the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times Dallas Morning News are going to reassert their dominance. No. And yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening, and it's all going to be video, whether it's television or on the internet, of the people delivering this news, delivering information. And, by and large, the television media since Cronkite has largely failed. There have been glimmers of success, but I don't know what happens. I mean, smart media manipulators are having a much easier time than they did 10 years ago, and certainly 20 and 30 years ago. And I don't know what the solution is. I guess, you think teaching, I mean, obviously now I can't think of anything more important than teaching kids how to use the internet effectively, how to distinguish information on the web. But I don't think schools are doing that. I'm about to start my daughter in school. I mean, She's in preschool, but, that's not a thing that comes up. I imagine that, the legislature in Kansas is not going to fund it.
Probably not.
Yeah. So I don't know. And again, goes back to my having trouble sleeping. Like, I don't know what the way out here is. We'll win some elections. But, you see a left that is squabbling significantly, as always, what it does. Unable, certainly at this point, to come up with a sort of coherent anti-Trump strategy other than an anti-Trump strategy, which is a good one. Right. I'm glad that there's some unity there. But, of course, we can't even get the full breadth of the left to embrace that story is legitimate.
Well, I'm never going to support another war with Russia. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you
liberals like you who want another world war just to cover for my wife's crimes.
Yeah, I mean, when you and Sam are beating the pro-war drums like you are.
Oh yeah.
What are the rest of us supposed to do?
Well, I know. Every time I do a segment that's like, I'm actually pretty, like, I think obviously there's something there with the Russia story, but I think it's more of a money laundering story than some kind of Manchurian candidate story. But it's funny, like, you can do a video on this is why Exxon and Putin are synchronized in a global hunt for oil. And I think anybody remotely on the left would probably not be so excited about that. And I still get the you want a nuclear armed conflict just because you hate Donald Trump so much and you're an apologist for Obama, even though you criticized him while I was, popping Vicodin and didn't even know what the news was. So anyway.
No, of course, no, you're total. But I mean, that's right. It's just, not this is not McCarthyism, and nobody's beating drums.
Right.
For war. We just right. And of course it's not going to be unlike, I mean, it'd be great if there was a Manchurian candidate scenario. I would love that just because it would be so great, right?
What do you need from me, Vladimir?
Of course it's money. In all likelihood. And and it should be investigated, and that's it. And some of those guys are right. I mean, that said, we head to 2018 and it gets to be the early part of next year, and this is still all we're talking about.
Yes,
and
that's
not
a problem.
Legitimate health care and not legitimate rectification of income inequality and tax reform.
Right.
Then we're going to lose again. That I agree with.
So then that's where I have two more questions for you, and that leads perfectly to the first one, which is the thing that is striking. I'm trying to think of how to articulate this, but it's we've had this mass institutional meltdown over the last couple of decades from what I see. So all institutions, particularly obviously Wall Street and the business sector, has completely undermined itself with greed and corruption and recklessness. But the press has failed in many ways, and mainstream politics has failed. A lot of these institutions have become very broken. But now what's happening is that with Trump, I think for people that are able to think a little bit subtly, they're realizing, well, wait a second, those institutions were very broken, but there was still some things that I took for granted. Like there were things that the EPA did, or there was some basic kind of things that even in enormous, decadent, plutocratic America we're still kind of working as an institutional base. And now the next stage of republicanism is to completely take a sledgehammer to all of it. But the problem is, as we were saying before, is that where does the accountability come from? Because it's still emanating from these institutions that people just don't trust. The mainstream press, the Democratic Party, and often for reasons that are those institutions' self-created problem. So I guess like it's a big thing to take on, but I agree with you that there's a lot of, I call it the dumb left. There is that sort of stupid, destructive, its own version of false equivalency when we're talking about Trump and other politicians. But at the same time, I think the smart version might be you can't really get rid of the cancer that's grown with Trump and the Republican Party without the sort of like overall immune system dysfunction of the whole system that we've created over the last couple of decades. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. And so it's a big, giant job, and I'm not sure how we handle it without real political leadership, because nothing gets done without political leadership in this country. And that means if a Democrat is sort of leading that charge, that it's got to be somebody who, again, like connects effectively. I mean, this guy, part of the frustration that many on the left have with President Obama is that I think he had that political skill.
Yes, definitely.
And he didn't use it. Or I think it's entirely possible that white people like us don't recognize the enormous burden that like he and Michelle faced on a daily basis.
I'm just going to add one addendum: white people like you.
Okay, sorry, white people like me. Sorry. That they didn't think, hey, we just got to get through today.
Right.
As this country was not quite ready to really accept us. Like the idea was fine, but the act.
I think it's totally true culturally, but I don't think that anybody would have objected to President Obama in his style of public communication advocates a serious housing policy that helps people out of the crisis. Like, I think what you're saying is partially true, but I don't think it applies to the policy.
I just think it's something we ought to recognize in our criticism of Obama.
Of course.
But I
agree.
criticism must go on. I agree.
I agree.
So it's got to be somebody sensational, and because you're talking about you're talking about convincing tens of millions of Americans to think about things differently. The perfect example was, we saw this thing significantly in Ohio with Governor DeWine, supporting, coming out strongly to address the opioid problem. And then his lieutenant governor, who's going to run for governor, talking about her two kids, 26 and 21, or 26 and 23, who are both dealing with serious opioid addictions. And so these are Republicans.
Right.
And then you look at Trump during the campaign. Oddly, the opioid issue became a campaign issue in 2016. John Kasich talked about it. Bernie Sanders talked about it. Hillary Clinton talked about it a lot.
Yep.
And then the White House, they cut 95% of the Office of National Drug Control Policy budget. 95%, from $388 million to $24 million.
Yep.
And so, Trump was just like, hey, man, drain the swamp. And to your point in that question, like no, not for this swamp was fine. This swamp
that was
good.
actually a clean reservoir, which you're polluting.
That's right. Yeah, that was not right. My kids swam there.
Right.
It was fine.
Right.
And so it's not that everything government did was wrong. I mean, you and I always knew this. Government does big jobs, and they do many of these big jobs incredibly well, and they also waste a lot of money.
But I would actually argue overall that government bureaucracy was probably one of the least, like, of all of the places, and a lot of places where government did fail, it was compromised by corporate money, and that's why. There was a lot of areas of American life where hated government bureaucrats were like quietly and effectively going about the business of like making sure that arsenic wasn't in your water and, stuff again that people weren't thinking about when they went into all these conspiracy theories and libertarian fantasies.
Part of it's going to be a re-education about what government does.
Right.
And one of the things is have a giant, big federal program that helps states deal with opioid addiction,
Yep.
which kills more people than drunk driving,
Yep.
a lot more.
Yep.
And to say nothing, we were on the Young Turks on Friday, and as hurricane season starts, and Trump hasn't named heads of NOAA or FEMA yet.
Right.
And how outrageous that is. And my best point of the week was, thank God he hasn't named people.
Right.
Because the acting directors are probably career employees of NOAA and FEMA. And they might be fine, right?
Exactly.
Because they're going to be professionals who work at these departments and will actually be equipped to handle situations when they need to, assuming that he hasn't completely slashed their budgets.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is the point of the week. My last question, Ben. I think you and I should talk movies more often. Are there, it's a generic question, but are there movies that fit the moment for you? I mean, I know Children of Men. That was a movie that seemed like it. That's a kind of obvious one, but I don't know. In some ways, Chinatown. I think even down to the father-daughter relationship. What are you thinking about?
Well, I mean, first of all, this week, it aired yesterday, but it airs again Wednesday, 2 and 7, all over the country, in theaters, The Godfather.
Yep.
Fathom Events, Turner Classic Movies, putting that on. But, I mean, The Godfather is about a lot of things. I mean, it's about family, it's about crime, but it's about sort of reckless corporate greed.
Right.
And it's also The Godfather, and you have an opportunity to see it in the theater with other people, and you'll all cheer the same lines, and it'll be a great experience. 2 and 7, check local listings for a theater near you. Last year's Hell or High Water, which was my favorite movie of the year. I don't think it was the best movie of the year, but it was my favorite. Yeah,
I love that movie.
And that was about regular folks' frustration going too far, but the frustration was legit and understandable and meaningful.
Yeah, that was a great. I think I texted you actually after I saw that like on a plane or something, and I was amazed. I was like, "Where did that come from?" Yeah, I agree. I would recommend that. And is that part of the Sicario? Like, is that a follow? It's like a trilogy that's going to be at the border.
No, I don't think so.
I had read that
related
somewhere.
Anyway.
All right. It's the same screenwriter, but I guess maybe.
But I mean, the books in the Cartel series by Don Winslow, which are going to become movies. The Cartel, Ridley Scott's going to do it, but everybody should read Don Winslow and those Cartel books. They're telling. And by the way, just because we're talking and everybody likes it, but I must say, Wonder Woman is. I don't really care about superhero movies. Wonder Woman's pretty great. I liked it except for the parts where I felt emasculated when the girl did stuff. But other than that, it was pretty good.
Wow. Well, that says a lot because that's why I was planning on not seeing it, obviously.
No, it's fine. It's good. It's good. It's nice. And it's, I mean, it did make World War I seem a little bloodless, but nonetheless, that was looking at our review. That was my biggest objection. I'm like, you can't, World War I is literally the dumbest thing man has ever done. That's the good news, is that we're at 100 years since the war ended next year, and we still haven't done anything quite as dumb as World War I.
I don't know. We're working on that. Yeah.
Give some time.
Give it some time. I might drone Sadiq Khan. That could be pretty dumb. Ben Mankiewicz, Turner Classic Movies, The Young Turks, my pal. Thank you.
Yes, my pal, Michael. Thanks.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Okay, everybody, we're going to get to the fun half. We got a lot to get to.
I'm so much more competent than Wilhelm II.
So much more competent. I am so competent. Do you remember that was one of the great moments where it was during the campaign. He's like panting in one of his pant moments. He goes, I am so competent. Every day's opposite day. We're going to go to the fun half. You know all the ways you can support the show, so do it. 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. IMs are open. See you in the fun half. Welcome back. Fun half. Michael Brooks, the Majority Report. Let's go straight to the phones. You're calling from an 847 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. It's Josh from Chicago.
Hey, Josh. What's going on, man?
Not much. First of all, I wore my green tie the other day at work in honor of the Green New Deal. So I'm very proud of myself.
Did you say that? Did you say?
Yeah, when they told me I had to wear a green.
All of the neoliberals, everyone else who criticized Jill Stein for saying the truth.
Actually, I did it in my Martin Luther King voice. So.
Yeah, did you say Jill Stein isn't a fucking corporate sellout? So tired of fucking corporate and Tulsi Gabbard. She's the only one who said the truth.
I said, and Hillary Clinton was the most effective evil.
Hillary Clinton was I didn't say she was the great evil. I said she was the more effective evil. By the way, she and the UK founded the White Helmets, which is an Al-Qaeda front group created on behalf of the Clinton Global Initiative. But people want to talk to me about, oh, Donald Trump is so bad. I never said he wasn't bad, but excuse me if I don't want another world war with Russia. Support independent media. I want to know what happened to Seth Rich. Why did Julian Assange put the tweet out? I'm so fucking sick of corporate Democrats. All right, sorry, go ahead. I'm enjoying myself.
Anyways, I'm calling about the UK elections.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, I'm actually working on the Corbyn campaign right now.
Are you a political consultant? Is that your gig? And before you answer,
no. I'm doing like, yeah, I'm part of the establishment.
No, I'm giving you a shofar for working for Corbyn. Okay, so that's great. What are you doing for Corbyn? That's great.
I'm doing text banking.
Okay.
And I'm also data entry. But like, so there was a poll that came out, I think Saturday, that had Labor down 1.
Yep.
Although it's not the most it's not the best polling.
Right.
YouGov is like by far like the best.
Right.
Most accurate.
And what was the
polls are shoddy in the UK, like in general.
Right. And what was the YouGov poll though? Wasn't the last YouGov? He's starting to get
3.
within like 3, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 3. And I believe Labor was up before the general election in 2015, or they were. It was looking like they wouldn't get the, or were. It was looking like the Conservatives wouldn't get a majority. It was, or they would have a hung parliament essentially, which means you need a coalition.
Yeah, what's the coalition stuff looking like now? Is it possible that Labor could get enough seats that there would be a coalition?
I think yes. I think their best play would be a coalition with either Lib Dems, although Lib Dems are going to be pretty wiped out in this election.
But they only have like 8 seats left, right? I mean, are they really going to lose? Are they really going to have worse performance
they've got more than that.
No, Lib Dems, I'm pretty sure have. I mean, no more than 11 seats. We could check it, but I mean, I don't think they have much room to lose.
Well, it would be between Lib Dems and maybe SNP.
Right.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Although SNP can be pretty opportunistic about like, they straddle the line between conservative and sort of liberal socialist policies. I'm looking up Lib Dems right now, but I mean that would be like the best. I mean the Greens only have 1. Green New Deal has not hit England the way it has here.
Right.
They only have 1. And it's their leader.
Yeah, Caroline Lucas.
I actually like their leader quite a bit.
Yeah, no, she's good. She's
really
good. Yeah, definitely. Yes, it would be nice if she could have some type of role in a coalition.
Yeah. So in the House of Lords they have 102. In the House of Commons they have 9.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, essentially, yeah. I mean, the problem is I don't know who wants to get in coalition with the Conservatives. It's going to be
that's a good thing.
Your problem. But,
yeah,
it is a good thing. I do think though that I think right now that it's looking really good, and I also think it's as much to do with the fact that Theresa May has run just like one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen.
No, she's a bit of a glum
Like,
bucket.
There's not enough Boris.
There's not enough. Yeah, it was more Boris about it.
You seem to be a bit of a glum bucket.
I mean, yeah. I mean, she definitely has. I mean, she is a. You know, I don't want to sort of get cheap here, but even on just a very present. I mean, she has a quite odd way of conducting herself. Let's actually. You know what? I appreciate the call. We're gonna go. Yeah, no. Make your final point. Go ahead.
It's 102 Lib Dems in the House of Lords right now.
There's 102 in the House of Lords.
201 Labor, 253 Conservative. It's a little different for the House of Commons. Lib Dems registered a lot of voters early on after they came out with their manifesto about staying in the EU.
Right.
But has since basically just sort of done nothing.
Right.
And will probably lose seats. But anyways, I would encourage as many people to get involved with this campaign as possible. And you can do it remotely. Because I think there's a really good chance that even if he doesn't win, they don't have a majority, proper majority.
Do you have a website to direct people to?
The Conservatives. Yeah, I mean, just honestly get involved with peoplesmomentum.com. And a lot of Bernie people are now working for that campaign. So, peoplesmomentum.com. You can do it remotely. It's pretty easy. But, you know, it's getting down to the point where, like, the more sort of grassroots momentum that we gain, we can sort of possibly push Labor over the finish line. Or at least prevent conservatives from getting a proper majority.
Right.
So,
yeah. And it looks like, actually in the Commons, Lib Dems right now have about 7 in the House of Commons.
7, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate the call. We're gonna actually do a whole UK sequence right now. Thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Great.
All right.
Thanks.
So let's start with this is Theresa May. We're gonna get into the fallout of the terrorist attack in London that happened over the weekend. But this is, I mean, David Cameron, when he took over the Conservative Party, I believe in 2008, or no, actually significantly earlier, it was like 2005, and then was elected several years later. He initially campaigned on as almost like a continuation of Blair. He promised to continue kind of social service funding levels, and then used being in office and the fallout from the financial crisis as an excuse to implement the classic regressive program you'd expect from the Tories, which was massive, savage austerity, ruthless cuts in middle and working class people's lives, and then, of course, you know, the same tax giveaways for the original trust fund babies, the UK ultra rich. As Gordon Brown said, the tax plan were dreamed up on the fields of Eton, and that was his only good line before he was drummed out of office. But David Cameron certainly had a better ability to evade and to kind of spin his way out of his accountability for his extraordinarily vicious attack on most people in the UK. And it was, you know, exactly. Hey, I lost my home and benefit. I was waiting for it again. No, go ahead. No, but so in 2015, Ed Miliband actually looked to be relatively poised to perform fairly well. It looked like there was definitely going to be another coalition government, and Cameron ended up winning a very convincing victory, of which I am convinced most of it really had to do with just presentational and leadership issues, and problems that Ed Miliband had in terms of presenting himself. I also think that Miliband, even though he had a clearly much more left position than Blair or Brown, was, you know, caught in the middle of embracing the Blair-Brown legacy and rejecting it. And frankly, I think in politics, a clarity of message in some ways is more important. So, you know, better to do a Jeremy Corbyn and reject it, or maybe actually run as a kind of more direct continuation of some of the things people liked about those policies. But Theresa May went into this campaign expecting to dominate. She's a extraordinarily awful candidate, and it makes it much more difficult for her to evade questions like this. This is at a leaders forum that happened on Friday, and a nurse is talking about her real loss in wages because of the austerity of this Tory government. And just this, whatever the opposite of, I feel your pain, Theresa May is doing here.
Working as a nurse for 26 years, do the Tories expect our support in the light of another 1% pay increase?
What we're looking at in terms of the National Health Service and ensuring that we can provide the National Health Service in the future is, if we just look at how much money is now being spent on the NHS, in the 5 years to 2020, we will be spending £500 billion on the National Health Service. Now, we're putting more money in at the moment, and we will continue to put more money into the future, into the NHS. But it is important that we recognise, as you will know as a nurse, the demands on the NHS are increasing all the time. We recognise the work that the NHS staff do, but
nurses get paid less and less.
Nurses get an increase, and obviously there are some other payments as well.
We've had a real terms decrease of 14% since 2010. So don't tell us we're getting a pay rise.
Let the person sitting next to you say it, the nurse say it.
I agree with that. My wage slips from 2009 reflect exactly what I'm earning today. So how can that be fair in light of the job that we actually do?
And I recognise the job that you do, but we have had to take we have had to take some hard choices across the public sector in relation to public sector pay restraint. We did that because of the decisions we had to take to bring public spending under control, because it wasn't under control under the last Labour government. And I'm being honest with you in terms of saying that we will put more money into the NHS, but there isn't a magic money tree that we can shake that suddenly provides for everything that people want.
You come in on this.
Yeah, so a woman making a living, keeping up with cost increases as a nurse in the most important national institution in the UK is asking for a magical money tree, not a robust shift in spending priorities that would actually allow her to make a living and hold to account the massive skyrocketing inequality that has also defined the modern UK, almost as bad as the United States. And let's be really honest here. Theresa May, who opposed Brexit initially, is a born-again Brexiteer, and she is very committed to the process. And the Tories' vision of the UK outside of the EU is to turn it into a almost regional Singapore. The goal was, and they lied about it when they were campaigning on this, people like Boris, they said, oh, the money that's going to the EU could go additional funding for the health service. That was the first thing that they acknowledged the day after the referendum passed. Like, actually, probably not. They want to cut standards on labor, cut standards on the environment, slash social services, and turn the UK even more so into essentially a regional tax haven and place for lower labor standards. So not only are they not going to make those investments, they want to fundamentally transform and decimate all of the achievements of UK social democracy like the NHS. So look forward to that if this woman continues on as a leader.
On a separate note, one thing that struck me when she said that...
Glum bucket?
Yeah, she is a glum bucket, but... Yes. Is that type of just completely out of touch and just playing the totally wrong way type of thing to say is the way that people characterize Hillary Clinton. And she would never, and I can't think of any instance where she has said something that is that out of touch with speaking to a person in an audience. She's better trained than that,
at
least.
Unfortunately. When she told the guy who was struggling with Obamacare costs and she said to keep shopping around, that was pretty bad.
But she's not as bad as Theresa May.
No. Of course she's not as bad.
I'm not trying to compare.
Hillary Clinton's definitely not as bad as Theresa May.
Yeah, I'm not trying to compare the two politics because
No, I'm saying
because
even
they're very different.
presentationally, I agree. She's not.
But
as bad
not
as Theresa
even
May.
just presentationally. I think she has a better. That's a very out of touch thing to say. Is there's no money tree? It's like
she's a Tory.
I mean, it's like being
That's
like
the classic Tory.
It's a fuck you to the person that she's speaking to.
Yes.
Right.
That's
So-
what the Tory manifesto could be.
I get it.
Hey, nurses, fuck you.
Yeah, she's awful and everything like that. But I feel as though I've just been reading some different things. Well, everyone in the audience might be happy to know that I've been doing some research on some things that I really know that I am not. I don't know the schedule for the show during the day, which is is different than the other people that are on this show. I come in later and do videos later.
Yeah, but what were you gonna say?
So what I was gonna say is that I started reading on just like general things that I know I have knowledge gaps in, and one of them is the way that the people see the Clintons is something that I don't understand the way that you guys seem to. And well, what I
want to make a point about the video still.
Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
If we have British listeners, the way she puts that conditional thing about if we want to continue funding the NHS in the future, I feel like that represents maybe a turning point. Like, I feel like a Tory couldn't have said that.
Never could have said that.
Years ago.
Never.
Like,
No. David Cameron spent years getting geared to get elected by promising that they would continue NHS spending. That is a significant shift. Definitely.
Yeah, my only point was that, a lot of things I've consumed news, and before coming on this show would go, it would just be current news, and I wouldn't really be keeping track of it because it just wasn't my job. It wasn't what I, needed to keep in my brain on a rolling basis. And now that it is, I'm trying to look at it on a broader level, and understanding the way that the people look at the Clintons is really complicated. That's one of the things, anyway, the people
the Clintons are
think of Hillary Clinton as like as so evil. And there are reasons I'm just starting to understand it more, even though I don't agree with it.
The problem is, I think, my thing is, I think there are real reasons to really dislike the Clintons, and I think there are reasons that have been cultivated by right-wing fever swamps. And I think basically, like, you want to talk about horseshoe theory and certain journalists and media members that make their money off of basically, they see that as a market opportunity rather than a problem.
Maxine Waters hurt me so bad. Hello.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things one of the articles that I read that really struck me was, and because I used to work on television, writing about television articles, and I read an article about how House of Cards is. A lot of people are writing pieces now comparing it to the Trump administration. I haven't seen the newest season or the season before that. I don't have time, but comparing it to the Trump administration and all of these things, and some things I guess are happening in the show, but really it's about how the right wing sees the Clintons.
I mean, but again, it's like what Matt said. There's the Clintons are the greatest evil in human history and all these conspiracy theories. And then there's just the reality that Bill Clinton has a terrible record on Wall Street, on crime, on the environment. And if you're like me, there were things that very directly affected my family on things like poverty policies that are disgusting and wrong. And the Clintons aren't some uniquely evil entity, but it is very weird that there's people who irrationally hate them, and then there's other people who seem to be completely unable to have a realistic conversation about who they are, and it's bizarre.
On another track, or what are you doing now? Lanes?
You can say track.
We're doing lanes.
Sure.
Also looked into Megyn Kelly, and I would like to retract any statement that I have ever made, hoping that she will do a better job as a reporter. She's fucking terrible.
Not
and
good.
Cannot redeem herself ever.
Oh no.
I never thought that she wasn't fucking terrible, but I was like,
But you like to see the silver lining for people.
When you said that about her, I was as shocked as someone telling me that Santa was black.
No, well, I knew that she said that. I wanted to hope for the best for the future. And now that I have just read more about the past, it's like, well, too fucking late.
So now,
you're too fucking
so
terrible.
now you know how to think about Tommy Lauren. No hope. Terrible person. The enemy.
Maybe. But no, see, here's the problem.
Oh, no. All right.
With her, the problem with her is that she's 24.
Yeah, she's dumb. I mean,
she is very stupid.
The better thing is that she can be used to basically split the abortion issue on the right, because I think, like, I actually have seen people that I went to high school with that actually like her stuff on Facebook, and I love that because I think we need to use them to split off young kids from this abortion stuff.
All right.
But also, she's not going to be good.
Yeah, she's never going to be good.
It's Tommy. I always say Tommy too, but I'm just saying she's fucking awful. She spreads hate. Her opinions are vile. However, if she did a total 180, I wouldn't be shocked because she just seemed to
I would be shocked.
Have an opportunity placed in front of her, and she fucking took it.
You know what? If your point is that she's first and foremost an opportunist, you might be onto something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's go get back to more UK stuff. So, not only has the Tory government said "fuck you" to the nurses, they've actually also said "fuck you" to police officers. Because what's interesting is that austerity in the UK has actually meant austerity across the board, unlike here, where it just means savage cuts on anything that benefits the broad general public. But of course, we want to build up a domestic security apparatus. And Jeremy Corbyn has brilliantly, and we can use this guy first. He has brilliantly and astutely connected the terrorism threat with the austerity policy of the Tory government. This is a very important way, because let's be real here. One of the essential things to combat terrorism and disrupt networks, especially in the IS age, this is the IS strategy. This was a truck that rammed into a bunch of people hanging out on a bridge. And these are the types of attacks that, in their manifestos and their documents, they're focusing on. They're focusing on the daily, relentless destabilization of every facet of what could be a normal life. So in Al-Qaeda, there might be a massive, horrific, symbolic, and not, obviously not just symbolic, a act of mass murder that is supposed to have a global meaning and global register, taking down the World Trade Center. But conversely, if you're, not in New York City or a couple of other major metropolitan areas, you can say, okay, well, it's horrible, but it doesn't directly impact my life in the same way. The IS strategy is no matter where you are, what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be a bomb, and it doesn't have to be a major landmark. It could just be just acts of horrific, sustained, and grotesque violence and indiscriminate sort of sense of constant disruption no matter where you are. And it's a shift in strategy. So in that reality, frontline services, police officers, and the very, very actual painstaking and important work of the intelligence to disrupt these networks is paramount, because you're not going to bomb away a problem like that in Syria, particularly when most of these people who are doing this are homegrown terrorists. So the Tories' cut in police is a direct undermining of UK's national security, and austerity kills across the board. This is Peter Kirkham, a former investigating officer in London, saying that the police were in crisis. He said this over the weekend in response to the terror attacks on Sky News in the UK.
But more armed police officers on the streets than ever before, we're told?
No.
Armed police officers on the streets than ever before?
No, they're not. Basically, people that are alleging that are lying.
So the government are lying?
Yes.
The Defence Secretary's lying when he says that?
They funded bringing us back to the number of armed officers we had in 2010 by 2020. And they've got to address a number of issues in order to get there.
The Prime Minister was previously, of course, Home Secretary for 6 years. She's saying that we need to now change the way that we are approaching terrorism here in the United Kingdom. What sort of advice, what sort of support do you think she needs to offer the police service?
I heard her speech and she raised 4 things that needed to change. She missed the most obvious, urgent one, which is to deal with the cuts to ordinary policing. Yes, all those other things that she said, long-term impacts and all the rest of it, yes, they're all valid. But what needs to be done, and it needs to be done immediately, is reverse and stop and reverse the cuts to ordinary policing. They're needed in intelligence gathering from communities. They're needed in monitoring those 23,000 very low-level people that are, inverted commas, known to the police and security services in their community.
And just to clarify, you say that the government is lying about the number of armed police officers that are on the streets of the United Kingdom.
Yes, in 2010 we had 1,000 plus more. They've got a plan in place, and they've said they've funded, not totally, but they've part-funded, bringing that up again by 2020. We are not there yet. We saw a brilliant response in London here last night. We saw it in Westminster a month or so ago. We saw it in Manchester a couple of weeks ago. If this had happened anywhere else, you would not be seeing that response. It is threadbare elsewhere in the country.
So there it is. That's his Tory austerity policy is a threat to national security. And by the way, for all Sebastian Gorka, neocon fantasists, Sam Harris acolytes, that's how someone who actually deals with security issues talks about and assesses how to deal with terrorism. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, and he clarified this statement somewhat later, but I love how he's jumping on this in a smart and opportunistic way and connecting his overall message about how the Tories are decimating and undermining the country through austerity, through their war on the public services with this security threat. And to be clear, before this quote, in this interview with Corbyn, not sure where the interview was, they're quoting, I guess it was The Guardian picked it up. It's fine. Steve Hilton, who is a former advisor to David Cameron, has said that Theresa May should resign over cuts in policing. Now, Hilton, there's not great blood between Cameron and May. Hilton might have his own interests, but this is the equivalent of a political strategist for Tories saying May should be gone. So Corbyn is being asked, do you agree she should resign over the policing cuts? And here's how he answered in this exchange.
Given her record on policing numbers, there have been calls for her resignation. Would you back those calls?
Indeed, I would, because there's been calls made by a lot of very responsible people on this who are very worried that she was at the Home Office for all this time, presided over these cuts in police numbers, and now is saying that we have a problem. Yes, we do have a problem. We shouldn't have cut the police numbers.
So to be clear, you would like to see her resign over this?
We've got an election on Thursday, and that's perhaps the best opportunity to deal with it.
Beautiful. That is the best opportunity to deal with everything. If you're in the UK, you need to get out and vote for the Labour Party. It's vital for protecting the UK, and it's vital for the global left. And yes, her previous position as Home Secretary, she presided over both a cut in policing, which undermined security, as well as massive incursions on civil liberties. A friend from the UK compared her to a British Rudy Giuliani. Get out there, vote, save what remains of the UK, and put an actual, for real, democratic socialist in charge. It's a very significant opportunity.
If Corbyn wins, some friends and I have already decided we're going to London later, maybe next spring or this winter.
Well, there you go. What more do you need to know? Lex coming if he wins. All right, you're calling from a 509 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. This is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. I wanted to talk about something serious today.
Okay. Please proceed.
I would like to weigh in on the cuck controversy.
Oh, God, I knew it!
Okay. Yes, please.
So I just wanted to say that, and Michael, I know you have a tendency to interrupt, so I need you to just zip it for a minute while I explain my position.
Lips sealed.
I want to say that I agree with Kelly that the cuck thing has sort of run its course. And I wanted to explain to you my thought process in arriving to this conclusion.
Okay.
First, I think she's right because, the joke has run its course. It's been a long time since you guys have been cucking it up over there. Also, I've been doing a lot of reading about the subject, and I think it's frankly pretty offensive historically if you look at the context of where this all came from.
Right, that's true.
But really, my position on this didn't crystallize until I think late last night as I was watching my neighbor plow my wife. That's when I realized that it's probably gone too far.
That was when you realized. And you were only calling to make serious points now. Are you still there?
To be honest, now that, well, I guess that's a spoiler. But does your wife roll her?
He's done. He hung up.
He hung up?
Yeah, mic drop.
I'm just thinking that Ronald Reagan's wife rolls her eyes at him quite a lot. So that sort of proves my point.
This is true of all great men.
It's a dude's only joke. I mean, it's not that I don't find it funny sometimes and get why it's funny and all of this, and it's, but at the same time, have you ever heard me say it or any woman?
I've heard women. Yes, I have heard women make cuck jokes. Yes.
I mean, it's just not very common.
Well, I don't think cuck jokes are common writ
on
large.
The show. The percentage of women that's listening has increased dramatically since Matt and I started.
As soon as the cuck jokes started, you can actually graph it. More cuck jokes, more women listening. That's why I'm so committed to them.
It's just not very inclusive, and also,
that's not okay.
We're just the cuck show, man.
All right. Yes, we are. The best description of our show is that we're Charlie Rose with incest and cuck jokes, which I was very proud
I saw
of.
that tweet as well.
It was brilliant. But
all I'm saying is I was like a little more in a pissed off mood when I was saying that, and I was just over it. And it's not that I just.
All right, it's fine. We can keep going. You can calling from a 814 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael.
What's up?
Thanks for taking my call, everybody. I'd like to say hi to the guys. I'd like to give you a little trivia on La Poupée.
Sure.
Do you know who originally played those licks before Hendrix did?
Matt's great
Played
uncle.
on the original.
I'm not sure. I don't know much about the original, actually.
I have no
There's
idea.
Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page from
really?
the Yardbirds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was the first. He played on the original.
Did you have to do some rendition of that song in order to be in the music industry back then or something?
You must, because
So
it
weird.
was covered by Dana Gillespie. I'm with David Bowie in arrangement and production. It's been done. It's been like in the mid '90s. You got a revival from a duet that added an almost Arab influence to the song, and then the latest rendition has been by, I believe her name is Beverly Joe. I can't remember her name, and she does this really kind of funky, almost country rock kind of version of it, and it's really good. I can't remember her last name. Her first name is Beverly Joe. You guys might want to check it out. It's a great rendition.
Matt,
it's a little heavy.
You're getting it down, Matt.
All right, so
All right,
just
man.
for that. But Michael, you and Ben were talking about how people deny the reality of what they're really doing, and I think I've watched this now for 45 years. Just this continual denial of the reality. I mean, look at Trump in relationship to talking about the British politics. Trump uttered an actual truth in one of his tweets, which was, "Notice we're not having a gun debate over in Britain," and it was like the stupidity of it was almost brilliant. And it was because there aren't guns. There are no guns.
That's true. There
but
is not a
we're
gun
not going to
debate there,
deal
right.
with that.
Right.
Right. So one of the things that we have to understand about ourselves, I think, is that we're biological machines. I mean, we're biochemical machines. In the United States, we've developed this, we've fetishized guns to the point where people have almost hormonal reactions to it. I mean,
I think
it's
people
like
have
they're
hormonal
driven
reactions
by
to
something.
everything,
Yeah, we are. That's what
Right.
that's originally what I was going to base this on, and that's part of the denial process.
Mhm.
We've got this built-in mechanism developed over hundreds of thousands of years of sort of denying our own death, and we almost have turned that sort of biochemical defense system into a way of denying reality everywhere. And it's really hard to break through that. It's how it's the part of addictive personalities that you have to break through is that they have to understand that it's a biochemical reaction that they're having to these things. All right,
But don't you
and
think
that
it's
it
also
changes the brains.
I mean, it's a kind of integral process, though, right? Because there's the biochemical stuff, which is vital, and then there's the kind of, whether. And I don't want to get into the debate about whether this is all just a byproduct of brain activity, anyways. But there's also the stories that reify, and then it becomes like a self-reinforcing feedback loop, right? Like the identity and the stories, individual and cultural, correlate with the hormonal and the brain activity, and I think you're right. That's why, and that's why it's not a question of rational persuasion. I mean, that's just
no, it's not. You can't rationally persuade them.
Right.
They have to come to that realization because they've hit a moment where reality can't be denied.
Right.
Where in an addict situation where they've reached the bottom or they're incarcerated, and they can't deny those truths. They can no longer function in the reality that they've sort of built for themselves. And I think that's probably at the root of why we can have these problems. And we've bifurcated that ability that human beings have to do that. Now, the United States, younger people are losing those addictions, let's say, those biochemical responses that we once had to weapons. There's still a number of people that continue to reinforce that. But culture is so much like a virus. We pass it on from one to another through those stories. And we learn the tricks of touching those biochemical hormonal things. Trump actually is a genius at that. He invokes a biochemical emotional response in his people.
Well, I think that's
and
what he's doing to himself. I mean, I think
he's stuck in a stage of
development. He is that. He is the crazy, bigoted old man, yelling at Fox. I mean, that's what he is, and I think that
he's the anger, right? He's an anger that is very much expressed at that stage of development in the way we go through life.
Right.
I believe in the stages of development. There's like 7 if you want to go with Erickson, and when you
I don't care what stage you go to. I just
development-
know that I'm at the highest. Okay. And everyone says
you're
it.
not, Michael.
Everyone says it.
Trust me. I've been stuck as a consumer of media for 35 years, and I'm stuck with this juvenile response to everything.
It's not bad at all.
Sorry.
It's a little Jewy. It was good.
No, I love your. I can do. You every day. I mean, today I'll probably do Clinton. You wandered from Clinton into Martin Luther King, but that was okay. It worked.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the calls, guys. I
Thanks a
really
million.
enjoy Michael Mondays because I don't pick my fights with Sam about Social Security. I think they're going after it. I want to call in someday. I've been on disability ever since I quit the mental health field, and just been kind of sitting here observing everything. But yeah, I'm on disability, and I think they're coming after Social Security disability. And people my age are going to be shocked when it happens. Jesus. So I'll call back when I can go after Sam on that. Thanks for taking the call, guys.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too. Let's just. So look, we know that Greg Gianforte assaulted Ben Jacobs a couple weeks ago. It was a pretty shocking story. We heard the tape. Ben Jacobs' glasses were broke. Yesterday, or Saturday rather. Michael Tracy, who I know who he is, but I'm not an avid follower of his work, tweeted out that something effective. He kind of put a caveat that he said Maxine Waters shoved him, and it wasn't such a big deal, but she did escalate and she shoved him. And I saw that and I thought to myself, wow. I mean, this is getting out of control. And then I saw the video, and if you go through life and you consider this a shove, I think that I have shoved thousands of people, and I've been shoved thousands of times by doing things like getting off a subway or excusing somebody that's walking by me, Or yeah, maybe actually like moving a microphone out of my face that I don't want to have in my face. So we're going to play this video, and there has been a lot of Twitter requests for this. There, I think, will be a response by right-wing Mandela.
When you say Russia's not our friend, was Obama mistaken to forge military cooperation with Russia in Syria and to try to get a START treaty?
Look, you and I have a different agenda, young man. I'm out to impeach this president. Get that straight. I'm out to impeach the president. I'm not going to be diverted by people who are Obama haters.
Do you think?
Woo, there you go.
Okay, there you go.
He didn't look terribly upset about being shoved. I just have to say, before we pivot, that's a stupid question. We were talking about this before the show. I would assume that Maxine Waters supports arms reduction. And the beginning of the START treaty started during this thing called the Cold War, where the United States and Russia really were actually in a global geopolitical competition that was pretty equal. It's not really equal today. And what they did was, because they were adversaries, but they still wanted to negotiate with each other and make the world slightly safer, they did things like reduce the START treaty. So you can, I think Maxine Waters she's more on the Russia story than I am. Although I do think
she's using it politically.
She's using it politically to do something that I support, which is damage and undermine a dangerous bigot neo-fascist who poses a much more significant threat to your well-being and the well-being of the world than supposedly what's going to happen in some type of World War III scenario with Russia. Now, that said, Maxine Waters is a water carrier for the liberals, the homos, and she has done more to hurt the black family than anyone since Martin Luther King Jr. But that said, I mean, Jesus Christ, is there a pussy requirement to be a TYT reporter? My Lord. The way he tweeted about it, you would have thought that she stole his Krispy Kreme. And then the video comes out and it's nothing. This is the most ridiculous. F you, Kelly. This is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen in my life. Sad. Pathetic. Now, look at Greg Gianforte. He went into fucking beast mode on that little Jew kid the other week. He was like, I just had my bat mitzvah, and I don't want the poor people to lose their health care. Can I ask you a question, Mr. Jer? And Gianforte goes, I'm fucking sick of it. Breaks the fucking Jew kid's glasses like a fucking beast. And that's the strategy for 2018. Maxine Waters moves a microphone out of her way, barely doing anything. I wish she had that much energy when it came to protecting this country when she was out destroying the black family in South Central. And all of a sudden, this guy's on Twitter acting like he was locked up in a Turkish prison. Hashtag puss. Hashtag wad. Hashtag sad. Hashtag he's right about Russia. I mean, I'm sorry, man. It's like, to know that came out of the Jacobs scenario, like when this is in people's mind, that a politician literally assaulted a reporter. And even if you write, like, hey, it wasn't such a big deal, but I got shoved by a congresswoman, it triggered a thought in me. I thought, fuck. That's actually a line where I'll be like the institutional liberal for that, not the dirtbag left, like I usually am. I don't think politicians should be shoving reporters, okay? Now, I will add the caveat that if a politician punched a Breitbart reporter, I'd probably support them. But that said, as a general proposition, if somebody said to me, hey, Maxine Waters, shoved Michael Tracy, I would be like, that's not cool. And was she really able to shove him? Because she seems like an incredibly
small.
petite little old lady. She also called him young man, which I thought was very nice before.
Not exactly Gianforte versus Ben Jacobs in the physicality department.
Yeah, a little different. Gianforte was like, maybe I don't want to answer your question, Talmud boy. He went fucking beast mode.
And there's a sort of premise of Tracy's questions where, you know, he thinks that Democrats are focused too much on this Russia issue,
right,
and should be focused on elsewhere. And I am sympathetic to that response. I also think Michael Tracy should maybe, how about go stick a microphone in one of the Koch brothers' face?
Yeah, maybe stick a mic on the, Democrats should be focusing more on the plutocrats that are destroying this country. How about harass them?
But he'd rather get that sweet spot of let's pick up some of these people who hate Hillary for good reasons and bad reasons, and there's a lot of hay there.
There's a lot of hay there. I also, I saw a video we didn't pull, and I don't agree. Obviously, I'm friends with Max Blumenthal. We have disagreements, but I saw Max Blumenthal did a video with Jamie Raskin, who I like as a congressman. But Raskin was saying that the Russians hacked Macron. Now that story, as far as I understand, has been completely pulled back. That is not the intelligence assessments. It's wrong. He shouldn't be saying that. And Max pointed that out. Legit. Do you think that there shouldn't be a START treaty anymore because of Russian money laundering? I mean, come on, man. Get the fuck out of here. She's trying to undermine an incredibly dangerous scumbag president who, incidentally, when I look back on it, because I did a little bit more research into Michael Tracy also said that people were exaggerating the dangerous environments and the press was whining about Trump crowds, and also that Trump was a comedic genius. Now, I do think Trump is a comedic genius, a unintentional one.
Well, that makes
and it's not
doesn't
funny.
make him a genius.
And it's not.
I mean, that's.
And it's not funny anymore.
He's comedy
It's
gold.
not funny.
He's a comic savant.
He's a comic savant, and it's not funny to have a neo-fascist Chauncey Gardner there. So don't go out and try to make a cheap shot on somebody. If you got her on a question, great. Don't make some bullshit up. It's embarrassing.
I just like to say no offense to you, Michael, but
offense taken.
I think that if I had to choose, I would like to hire right-wing Mandela full time, and you will have to be fired because we cannot afford both. I'm sorry.
Well, I will be here tomorrow.
Well, I will be making my recommendation to Sam.
Significantly less patient in show prep as right-wing Mandela. It would be great. I'm like, shut the fuck up, Kelly. I'm trying to focus. No one cares about your dog. I'm picking sound. Yes, you had problems in the subway. You got into an altercation. Shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ.
I will prefer that.
Okay. Well, that can be arranged.
I don't talk about my dog before the show.
It's after.
Yeah, okay. Only after.
That's true.
That's true.
Sam will get very, very,
that's when I go.
very upset. Do a Sam now.
I can't take it anymore.
Stop talking about your dog.
Stop it, Kelly. I can't focus. I'm trying to get into a Twitter conflict. Umar Shami. Old Matt did some excellent pieces regarding the starry state of sexism in the video game industry, but I believe that this is increasingly not being reflected in the content. They were strong, interesting female leads in Land of Us, not to mention being cited by GLAAD as one of the best treatments of gay characters in the storytelling medium. Do you think this was an exception, or is the content of games getting more progressively conscious, especially when you eliminate Japanese games, which I think are indicative of a sexism problem in Japanese media in general?
That's actually probably true of a lot of Japanese, especially those games where it's like beach volleyball.
Love fucking Japanese games.
All the polygons.
They are so awesome.
I think
next time before you interview Maxine Waters, play a Japanese game, Michael Tracy.
I think the general sort of corporate uncomfortability with just sort of out and out misogyny is reflected in video game companies. I think they have a long way to go, and my video game playing is mainly as something to just keep me not staring at the wall when I listen to audiobooks. So I don't really follow the characterization of it. Like Mass Effect, I have no idea how good that game was, and I played through it. But as far as characterization. So I think video games have a long way to go on that stuff.
Fair enough.
NBA 2K, one last point, still has cheerleaders in between every single quarter break when you play a game on that, and I think that's outrageous. Like no one
Matt doesn't want to see the cheerleaders.
not between every quarter of every single game I ever play. Yeah.
I guess you don't want a free exchange of ideas. Okay. Let's actually continue on the roast theme. Bill Maher. Bill Maher is somebody I looked this up the other day or yesterday. My friend Neda Khan and I, about 2.5 or 3 years ago, we did a video segment. Bill Maher had done a tweet where he compared bombing Gaza, which Israel was doing in the summer of 2014, in such an indiscriminate manner that even Joe Scarborough called them out. And of course, nobody in any milieu, from me to Joe Scarborough to most people involved in Palestinian liberation politics, certainly in the West Bank, are supporters of Hamas. And, you know, Bill Maher's thinking on Israel, Middle East, and Islam is sort of mean-spirited, infantile at best. And he did a tweet about how, well, Hamas is like a girl that's crazy, that's trying to kill you, and you can only hold her for so long before you have to hit her, or something like that. It was this weird, like, fusion of relentlessly unfunny, weird, sexist, and then a real-time justification for war crimes. So which, that's like the show. It's a good line. See, you miscalculate when you should talk into Mike sometimes. That was a good line.
It was me saying that's like the show.
Ba-da-bum. All right. So anyways, his show. So basically, Bill Maher, you know, and then with black people, Bill Maher has kind of always had like the weird, like,
he's like a liberal that would say hot chocolate in the lunchroom, I feel like.
Yes. It's like aging hipster racism from like the 70s. Like he would do the whole like, why can't Barack Obama be like Superfly? And then he goes in and he looks at the Republicans and he's just like, yo, motherfuckers, we ain't gonna do this no mo. And then he gets in his new official presidential car, which is a Cadillac. He would do monologues like that. Like look him up in like 2009, 2010. That was his version of saying Obama should be tougher. So there's this part, and I'm not going to lie. I think Bill Maher has definitely in the past been funny at times. I've watched his show. I would obviously go on his show. I would replace him on his show. But I think that, like, in addition to the ways in which he's always been a problem, there is an element now of like, I watch Bill Maher and it's just become fucking boring. It's just like, it's a weird, you know, it's a kaleidoscope of like, Russia. I shouldn't have been so mean to Mitt Romney and George Bush. Muslims are still the worst. And then a kind of like exhausted, aging effort to stay edgy. And that leads to exchanges like this. He's talking with Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, who has actually kind of maintained, I think he was one of the few people who remained a never-Trumper, arch fanatical conservative, but personally offended by Trump.
At least outwardly on social media.
At least outwardly on social media, so that gives him some time to, of course, because Bill Maher, again, it's sort of like, it's basically just generic, boring kind of center liberalism with an attempt at edgy humor. So here he is with Ben Sasse, and it led to this line by Bill Maher.
Be a kid thing. It's not anymore? Not out here. Okay. No, adults dress up for Halloween. They don't do that in Nebraska?
It's frowned upon. Yeah, we don't do that quite as much. But
wow, I've got to get to Nebraska more.
You're welcome. We'd love to have you work in the fields with us.
Work in the field?
That's part of that. That's
Senator, I'm a house nigga. No, it's a joke. Thank you.
So, you know what I like about this is that this is like the distillation of all of these guys who whine about this shit. Now, I'm not going to go into whether I really just honestly, I'm not trying. I don't care. I call for people to be fired all the time. I'm not going to call for him to be fired. But he made a weird awkward, embarrassing attempt at humor there. And it wasn't funny. Okay? In addition to being, and I'll say the word, deeply problematic and certainly unconsciously racist. Now, I'm somebody that I think people could probably glean from my humor. I wouldn't even rule out a scenario where some joke like that could potentially be funny. Okay? I'll just say that straight up. But it wasn't funny. It was stupid. It was racist. It was privileged and delusional. And the crowd had the right kind of reaction. There was a little bit of like, oh, I can't believe you said that. But there was actually a lot of like, all right, Bill. That shit wasn't funny. You're fucking lazy. And then he goes, oh, come on.
It's a joke.
It's a joke. So all of a sudden, then the burden flips on you to laugh at my fucking like early 70s knockoff humor. Or you're somehow not cool. It's the Jerry Seinfeld gay French king shit. It's not funny. It's boring. And it's a transparent and dull and pathetic attempt at being edgy. Which in the process actually does reveal a tremendous amount of insensitivity and white privilege. Sorry to SJW it up.
And insecurity. He knew he crossed the line
and
instantly.
Exactly. Exactly. And he knows that it's cool. There's still a market if it's Muslims, transgender people, or women. But it's pretty universally agreed upon among his market demo, not cool with black people. Yeah, like humans, because it wasn't funny.
It's also more complicated than I like working indoors versus outdoors. There's a complicated thing.
Do not even dignify him with that level of seriousness.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like more. I'm just saying it's more offensive than even the baseline offensive that it was.
I'm going to take this social schism caused by the slavery, and I'm going to use that for a cheap punchline, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked how Ben...
And he thinks in his mind that's his right because he's the edgy comedian.
Right.
And the thing is, you have to build up credibility to be able to do anything remotely like that. And he's been squandering his for years.
Right. I'm so glad Sam doesn't say that on air. I'm just kidding. The other thing is you can really tell the difference between Republicans there because Ben Sass is like, whoa, boy, I don't think that sounds right. But if it was a Trump Republican, they'd be like, whoa, fucking house nigger joke, here we go.
He tweeted out the next day that he wishes that he was more forceful in saying, whoa, buddy, that's not a funny joke there.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny.
Can you imagine a Republican ever doing that, though?
No.
Like, oh, my God.
He's like sitting there, he's just like, well, I mean, it's Bill Maher, but if I call him out for racism, that is really not going to help my reelect. You're calling from an 863 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Roderick from Beaumont, Texas.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I had two quick points. The first one was with Ben Carson and his whole entire poverty is a state of mind thing.
It's a state of mind.
Mace, yeah.
Yeah, Mace. It's a state of mind. I stay flossed in my mental. Sorry, go ahead.
He is the worst, one of the worst human beings on the planet. And I'm African American, and from my standpoint, he's infuriating.
Mm-hmm.
Just in a time where young black men could use somebody to look up to and made it out without needing entertainment or sports.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm curious, what was your history with Ben Carson? Like, when did you first notice him? Like, because I know he's been a public figure for a while, and what has it been like seeing him basically just go into eventually the Trump administration?
Well, once I got involved in politics, just watching the whole entire, within the past year and a half, I think at first I started watching when Herman Cain ran, and then And then when Ben Carson ran, and then I sat there and started watching some of his speeches that he has. And then I sat there and started like reading about like different stuff that was in his book. And it's like he pushes this narrative of I'm all the bad things that you think black people are.
Right.
But through the grace of white Jesus, I was able to sit there and it's like, no, dude, you worked hard, you studied hard. Why don't you go tell some black kids that instead of telling a bunch of old white people that through the grace of white Jesus, I was able to make it out of Detroit, Michigan. It's like, dude, it's just infuriating listening to him talk. It's just
But I think you described. I mean, that's the market. I mean, the market is. I mean, even down to like the whole narratives about how supposedly how bad he was, exactly how violent he was. I mean, that's the whole point. Is like it's the native informant role, and you go and you validate people's bigotry, and also most importantly, that there's nothing that can be done. And the irony is that even Ben Carson, he went to a public school, he got a lot of luck. He still had the resources that were also publicly provided. And I'm sure, I don't know, maybe he got a full ride to Yale, but I'm just saying, like, even in a scenario, I mean, of course, mindset matters. Everything matters. But the idea that you could take, I mean, but you already know what it is. It isn't a mess. It's a message for bigoted white people who want their narratives reconfirmed by someone who represents who they have bigotry about. That's his point. I mean, that's his whole business proposition. I think, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it infuriates me.
I get it.
Just listening to him talk, it's freaking horrible. Just to sit there and watch him go out in front of these audiences and, oh well, I was lazy in college and I was gonna fail my midterm and I prayed to God and He gave me all the answers and I aced it. No, he didn't. You freaking studied, dude. Just say you studied and you worked hard.
Right.
That's a lot. I mean, it makes no sense to me. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was the whole entire the free speech or the free speech thing on campuses and stuff, and Milo going around doing his things and Ben Shapiro going around doing his talk and getting protested and everything.
Shapiro,
I think the protesting, only reason that they're protesting is that there's no real opposition. Like they go and do these speeches, and the only opposition they get are kids who aren't very researched and like they're stupid talking points and can't give a real pointed question to them that might be able to trip them up. I think it would be better if like somebody like you or Sam or David Pakman's a very good debater, or just anybody on the left that could actually give them a serious debate would call the school and just say, okay, I would like to challenge him to a debate, see if he would like to do his.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just not super into, debate as a format in general. I mean, I think sometimes in like campaigns, it's obviously important. And I think that there's some, higher level debates that have value, but this kind of performance art, like I don't think there's any value to debating somebody like Ben Shapiro or let alone Milo. I mean, at least, Ben Shapiro's like really, he's in that twerp mode and he'll take it seriously and everything. But especially someone like Milo, I mean, it's just the moment that you're
lending credibility,
take him in any way seriously and give him credit for being anything other than like a grade D knockoff hustler is already self-undermining.
Well,
that's the reason I regret, I debated this weird, some fucking, what is it, Sargon, some YouTube. I regret that. I mean, it was just like,
but even then,
there's no point.
Then, I watched that debate.
Yeah.
No, there's a point. I watched that debate because when you scroll down through the comments, when you got past all the, this dude's a cuck and this dude's this and this dude's that, and you got into his other, like the more serious of his followers, because every one of those guys also have serious followers. They got into why wouldn't Sargon answer that? What's regressive? Or Sargon doesn't really know what regressive is. He's just throwing this term out there as a buzzword. And he doesn't know what it is. You got into those comments, and it's like some of his followers started to peel off because he could not answer a simple question.
Okay.
And I thought it was pretty good of
And
you to
that's
sit there and
I think
that was valuable.
you got to sit there. And,
I have to say, it's amazing.
You have to sit there. And,
I wonder if I and anybody in progressive media have to hold records for being like record of number of times being called a cuck by Virgin is extraordinary. Anyways, go ahead.
I think the problem with debating is it takes preparation. Like if I think if we wanted a debater of the left, that would be their main gig mainly. Like if we basically it's always they take all challengers, so whoever it is.
But I do think though that
But I mean, like, I do get your point of that. I don't think that Milo's worth debating because I think that fundamentally he doesn't really care, and he's just going to use that opportunity as a like. There's a concept called the Gish Gallop with evolution theory, and they basically just they throw out so much nonsense that you have to feel compelled to respond to because of basic decency that you're never allowed to really set the forms of debate. And I think that's what happens when you debate fascists too.
Well, you have to sit there and at the same time, you have to debate him in his own territory as far as you have to troll him. You know what I mean? You have to sit there and set weird little narratives that he won't be able to troll his way out of, you know?
Yeah, I think that a much more valuable thing for people on the left to do in new media circles is I think that, and I want to be really clear, I don't mean this substantively. I think that there has been an opening because of certain excesses in parts of the left, not in any way on the merits of these things, but just presentationally and culturally. There definitely was a culture that developed that I think has already kind of died down with the left of people that are, there was some self-confirmation of stereotype of people that are totally humorless. They're, they're more upset about like some type of, portrayal on a sitcom that sucks or something, like there was this rise of, and again, it was very trivial. It was like, I forget, there was a woman who wrote about the alt-right who made the point that it would be like somebody who was writing like a ridiculous Tumblr account. It was never people on the left who were actually writing real things about gender and identity and race and the serious stuff.
Yeah.
But there was a way in which people like Milo were able to go into a space and pretty much assert like, do the classic bullshit. Like we're the ones with senses of humor. We're the ones who have, we know how to have fun. We blah, blah, blah. We're not as serious. And I actually think that far more important than debating those people or pretending that they have legitimate ideas is through our own presentation, our own sense of satire, our own sense of, cultural fluency to brand ourselves better. I think that's really what it comes down to, because I think that debates are useful in a realm of, this is like, I'll go fully in this direction. You're at the Council on Foreign Relations and one person has a specific policy set on Saudi and the other one has a different one. But there are shared goals. We could agree or disagree with them, but there's a shared framework, there's shared goals, and then you're debating about implementation. And then there's maybe another realm of debate that is like fun when you're in college and it's these first order questions about, consciousness or God or, freedom or justice and all this stuff. But the way this stuff gets filtered down into the stuff we do is usually what it often is somebody, either doing something that's completely just kind of like watered down sophomore year philosophy, like a Sam Harris thing, which is then used to envelop and justify all sorts of horrific policies and attitudes, which they never want to take accountability for. And that's an endless and frustrating conversation. Or it's people like, Milo or Ben in a different way that just, they just have fundamentally either cynical or deeply stupid worldviews. And I don't see my role in politics and my role in media as persuading those people. I think that if you're younger and you're, amenable to different ideas, it's my job to say, this is why it's better to come along and be on the side of, people who fight racism, people who want everybody to have health care, people who want society to progress and be better. And I think that is, how we implement it is another set of questions. But, a lot of this stuff is basic conflict and basic moral claims. And that stuff just isn't really solved through debate. But anyways, I appreciate the call, man.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Okay, let's do a bit more sound. Over the weekend, we've talked a lot about Sinclair Broadcasting, which is the other sort of even further to right than Fox. And they have hired, do you remember a guy named Boris Epshteyn? He was a political advisor to Donald Trump. And now he has a new segment on Sinclair called The Bottom Line with Boris. And this is a preview of the 2018 Republican congressional strategy, the 2020 Trump re-election strategy, and also another great example of how, my God, if you're willing to have right-wing politics, you can get any job imaginable, even if you are not suited for the medium. Here is Boris inaugurating The Bottom Line on Sinclair Broadcasting.
Considers ways to improve its messaging. One area that may see change is the White House daily press briefing.
Our chief political analyst, Boris Epshteyn, who is a former senior Trump campaign advisor and administration official, gives his insights and commentary about what changes may be coming.
The relationship between the White House and the media in general, and the daily press briefings in particular, have gotten a lot of attention recently.
My friend, you don't think your wife deserves diamond? It is anniversary. Sorry, go ahead.
Let's take a look at the White House press briefing, what it is, what it represents, and how it serves the American people. The White House press briefing, led by an official press secretary, started way back in 1929 under President Herbert Hoover. In 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself took a larger role in the press briefings. He took questions from the press as often as twice a week. Press briefings represented a way for the press secretary to give the press access to the administration, to allow the press to pose questions on the issues of the day, and to inform the American public of what was going on at the White House and the administration as a whole.
Some members of the media were engaged in deliberately false reporting.
From the very start of the Trump presidency, the press briefings have veered way off course. They've become much more theater than information gathering. Theater in which, frankly, the press has often played the leading role.
You don't want to cover the stuff. No, hold on.
No evidence
No,
of wiretapping at Trump's
actually,
house. Now you've had the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Actually, here's his quote, Jonathan. No, hold on. I understand that.
Changes are afoot within the White House communications and press operations, and scaling back the press briefings is a part of that. The White House is looking to hold more off-camera briefings and considering for President Trump, just as FDR did almost a century ago, to himself occasionally brief the White House press. The bottom line is this. The interaction between the press and the White House has become much more of the story than the actual substance itself. The briefings have devolved into a circus and a distraction. The American people and the press absolutely deserve access to the White House, and they should continue to pose their questions. However, that can and seemingly will be done in a manner much more conducive to delivering actual information to the American public.
That is an extraordinarily boring version of 1984 you just saw there. This is literally, and also I should say, I just noticed on the AMs, this is a guy that Bill Maher called one of the good ones in terms of people that were around Donald Trump. But this is the spin you're going to see. It's one of the good ones. This is the spin you're going to see, that it's all the press's fault. And this is what Ben and I were discussing. Yes, the mainstream press has done a horrible job, completely undermined its credibility on everything from how trivially it covers politics to whether or not it obviously aggressively covers the corporate sector. This goes back to the 1970s. I look at a conversation I had with Mark Ames about Seymour Hersh. And when he was exposing the wrongdoing of the CIA, he could do it. And when he went and tried to expose the wrongdoing of corporate America, it hurt his career. But they're taking that undermined principle and selling and packaging why you should only have propaganda and no information. And that's going to work for their base. It's a question if it can work enough to peel people off in the general. So from a policy perspective, I mean, obviously, this goes back to media consolidation and media ownership. And that's another thank you, Bill Clinton moment. Signing telecommunications deregulation in 1996. And obviously all Republicans, except for I think John McCain, voted against that. But from a cultural perspective, this is why the press needs to desperately do what it can to regain its credibility, because the lane for this kind of nonsense, propaganda, and doublespeak is wide open because of an administration that has zero ethics, lies as a matter of habit and basic just functioning, but a press that undermined itself.
This is exactly what they did to the government, too. You basically make the institution impossible, unable to do its function, and then attack it for not being able to do its function.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the same. And that's why they have a self-reinforcing policy. Joseph Ballin, you need to have a Middle East expert on to talk about the Qatar crisis. Qatar, quick research of this, why this is happening, points to Iran. Qatar wants better relations with Iran. That's a bit in dispute, but I will have somebody on to talk about this. With Iran, they specifically mentioned a visit to Saudi Arabia. Qatar also supports the Muslim Brotherhood. That's right. An organization that the Saudis view as destabilizing the Middle East. Saudis came up with the BS excuse for supporting terrorism as a reason, even though they both countries do it. Yep. If you Google Qatar-Turkey pipeline, Wiki says it's on route. One route to Turkey was via Saudi Arabia and Jordan and Syria. Another was through Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iraq. Qatar wants to go through Iraq, which is Jordanian-friendly state. Saudis, which is an Iranian-friendly state. Saudis want it through Jordan. Oh, I see what you're saying. I will have somebody on. Yeah, really briefly, 5 Arab states have broken ties with Qatar in what the press is framing as a complication of U.S. coalition building with regards to the fight against IS. Those countries are Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. Qatar is basically, because of its wealth, able to drastically kind of punch above its weight in international affairs. They also stream out Al Jazeera. I've appeared on Al Jazeera, have journalists on. I mean, Al Jazeera puts out an incredible amount of very high quality programming, particularly in English, but it also, particularly in Arabic, clearly does have some synchronized political goals with the Qatari state. And just like every other media source, that's quite important to keep aware of. Qatar has played a different game. I mean, in some ways, it's a similar game to the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates, which is that they have a massive amount of money and they throw it everywhere, including in the United States. But they've made different bets. They supported the Muslim Brotherhood over against the coup that removed it. The Saudis strongly supported a reassertion of control by the Egyptian military. And people definitely make the case, and I think it was true certainly several years ago, that Al Jazeera in Arabic was at times a conduit for al-Qaeda, at least neutral coverage. Qatar is also playing in Syria. And I'm just going to quote now the explanation of why they've made this move. Saudi Arabia said it was acting to protect its national security from the dangers of terrorism and extremism. The foreign minister of Qatar released a statement saying that the action had no basis in fact and was unjustified. And these are sort of 3 kind of key reasons. Last month, Qatar said its state media had been hacked after comments attributed to the Emir Sheikh Hamad bin Al-Thani were published referring to tensions with Washington over Iran policy and saying that Trump might not be in power for long. Qatar denied the comments and said it had been a victim of cybercrime. The other Arab states that took action, all but Bahrain, majority Sunni, have long sparred with Qatar over its support for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and around the region, including through broadcasts of the pan-Arab news network Al Jazeera, which Qatar funds. Qatar's rivals have also faulted it for condoning fundraising for militant Islamist groups fighting in Syria, although several of the other Sunni-led monarchies in the region have played similar roles. Qatar's opponents also have added a third allegation to its grievances, that it's conspiring with their regional rival Iran. That charge is especially striking because Qatar has been actively participating in 2 wars against Iran, in the Saudi Arabian-led air war against the Iranian-backed Houthi group in Yemen, and in the rebel fight against Bashar al-Assad in Syria, which is supported by Iran. So there's no real evidence that Qatar is pivoting on either of those policies, and it seems to me that has much more to do with internal rivalry and group-supported intentions that already pre-existed with regards to Egypt. But there might also be, as the IM was alluding to, a difference in how to approach the Trump administration. The Trump regime has proven quite close so far with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and I will definitely continue to follow that. Kunka Inte. I just saw Bill Maher's Fields last week. He's just an uppity bitch. Heath, not Keith. I think in addition to the D-Man, you and Andy need to start breaking down the Bill Maher jokes and insights. That's a great idea. Used to be a fan of the show, but now I only watch real time in a way I might watch a massive bridge collapse on an interstate. That is with paralyzing shock, empathy for its victims, and acceptance of the fact that I can do nothing to stop it. I typed this before you mentioned you covered this bullshit today, but my suggestion stands. I agree. Epish. Speaking of Chinatown, any Ross McDonald, Margaret Miller, or Dashiell Hammett readers in the MR crew? I've read Dashiell Hammett back in the day. Hammett's Red Harvest and Glass Key are great if you like Chinatown. I love Chinatown. If you're a gun fucker, you can your firearm cuck you? It's a deep question. Ben Sass took a stronger stance against Halloween costumes than using the Black Holocaust as a cheap punchline. That's exactly right. It's a great point. Make America cast again. If the movie Frost Nixon came out this year, it would sweep the Oscars. Perfect for the Trump era. Frank Langelli's incredible. Kyle, how can you know for sure David Dane and Ben Mank are not the same person? Tulsi Rich, 2020. Mr. Elevators, Ben is my favorite TYT personality. The exchanges between him and Jank and the occasional Michael Shore, the only reason I'm still a member. Thanks for having him on again, Michael. Many people. Did you see the Dem challenger to Steve King pulled out due to death threats? No, I did not. We got to get on that. Ivanka Tinkle. Doesn't surprise me, though, that there would be a lot of thuggery around Steve King. Do you think there's any validity to which Trump may be watching and repeating right-wing media BS for the sole reason of repeating it to be sure to fire up his base, pandering to their preconceived, poorly gone conclusions, surefire way to stroke his fragile ego and stay on message at the same time, the way he got elected? Yeah, I think so, but I also think it's his genuine belief. I think to the extent it matters, and I actually think in Trump's case it does matter because you're dealing with a deeply, 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 deeply damaged and dangerous person, that there still is a slight distinction. Like if you watch the Roger Stone documentary, that's a dude who knows how to operate, and very obviously with unbridled cynicism, but it's a different thing. The guy, I think, believes this stuff. Colin Doucet, Trump. Bill Cosby's going on trial today. Totally unfair, folks. If he gets charged, I'll give him a presidential pardon. Great guy. Well, I don't know. Another black guy in prison. Cedars de minimis. What do you say to a friend who's struggling about whether they should see Wonder Woman because of Gail Goddard's Zionism? I'm sorry. I don't get down like that. See the fucking movie. I like Robert Duvall as an actor. His politics are the worst. He's still Tom Hagen in The Godfather, man. Come on. The deafer pug, Also, I mean, I don't know what that means. Like, is she a supporter of occupation and siege, or does she just want Israel to exist? Right. The deaf ray pug, the version of the French no thing sounds like a garage band 15-year-olds would have learned to play in time with each other. Get a metronome. Secret identity politics. Theresa May be going full McMulvaney there. Nothing makes conservative happier than not having enough money. They love it. Easy D, my landlady lives next to me. She organizes Indivisible while I ride DSA. When I told her I was volunteering for Tom Perella, the progressive candidate in the upcoming Virginia primary, she told me the far left candidate never wins the general. We've tried and failed. What? I wasn't sure she was talking about Bernie, and I like my living situation, so I just said, nah, I feel a groundswell 2020, Jill Stein 2020. She went inside, and I went and got the Field of Burn tattooed across my knuckles.
I can't help but think that
Yeah, that's
exchange
a
could have
weird-
been better handled on both of your parts.
I think he was joking, though.
I know.
You're calling. I know, but it wasn't funny. You're calling from a 330 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
This is Richard calling from Ohio.
Hey, Richard. What's up, man?
Well, unlike Ronald Reagan, I actually do have a serious point to make today. And it's because of the whole Portland thing. I assume you guys saw the free speech thing, the various and sundry protesters. Nobody was really hurt, but a fair number of weapons were collected on both sides. And at least the right-wing guys seemed particularly looned out. But I have to admit that I'm actually concerned about the way that Antifa folks seem to be taking with a certain amount of glee to punching Nazis. Nothing personal, Kelly, but once we get into street fighting territory with right-wing thugs, it starts looking more like Berlin in the 30s and starts giving, normal middle-class folk the willies, and therefore, by definition, gives them an excuse almost to think about, well, maybe that Trump guy isn't so bad after all, because he's putting the boot in on these Antifa crazies.
Yeah, I guess I gotta just say, I just want to separate. I don't want to get into an Antifa one way or another debate. I've made no secret of my sympathy for them and my support in a lot of ways. I don't know, I literally cannot comment on every single thing, but I don't have any problem with the innate idea of it. But I do think in general, like, it's a disease on the left. Like, there is no conservative that's sitting around thinking about a generic, middle of the road voter. And I would maintain that if somebody in this environment where Antifa is not, I could go and ask actually people who are quite politically well informed, and they might very well have no idea who Antifa is or what any of this, neo-fascist free speech stuff is. They don't know. What they might know is that the president of the United States and the attorney general and the senior strategist, and these people are overt and dangerous bigots who are reinstituting, whatever modest tiny reforms in the drug war. They're pushing back for an expansion of sentencing and structural racism. They're winking at police brutality. Trump's whining now that the ban shouldn't have been reformed. We made it politically correct. It should be the original Muslim ban. All of that stuff. So I would say that if there is someone out there who is really going to think about shifting and voting for Trump, who is in any way persuadable because of Antifa, that's not someone who is persuadable to begin with at all. So I just wouldn't worry about these kind of generic middle voters. I think we're too in our heads, and we just gotta get, we gotta get on the field.
If something happens, like something terrible that rebounds against the and all of a sudden Mid America is completely like afraid of Antifa, then we can discuss this. But
then we can
personally,
discuss it.
I
Yeah,
think
sure.
I think it's somewhat of a healthy societal response. I wouldn't personally encourage someone to punch a Nazi, but I also don't have any interest in using airtime to condemn it.
I agree, and I also think, frankly, there's the safety pin as far as I'm concerned. Hey, I appreciate the call, man. Thanks. Okay, so even as Ben Mankiewicz and I were talking, and we use the most moderate, mellow way of talking about the Russia stuff, which is that anybody with a ability to observe reality would know that there is a relationship there. There's a relationship with Mike Flynn. There's a relationship with Paul Manafort. There's a relationship with little Jared. And we also know that, maybe Trump is just utterly insane, and he was so upset that James Comey would not pledge loyalty to him. But we do know that Donald Trump admitted to obstructing justice on national television when he fired James Comey. Now, I'm not a fan of the FBI. I'm not a fan of James Comey. But these institutions, again, they kind of matter, and they're investigating the president. It's kind of a significant thing. And what else is kind of a significant thing? And if you have any ability to step out of your anti-Russia hysteria, the fact that what we just discovered a minute ago, that Donald Trump is refusing to allow James Comey to testify. No. He blocked him? You said he blocked him.
He will not block.
He will not block him. I misread that. I misread that. He won't block him. Okay. Well, that
what a cuck.
Totally undermines my point. But Trump is still, Trump's a total cuck. So when's he going to testify?
I'm getting this from New York Times. I think Thursday. And Trump is not going to attempt.
He's not going to block him. I mean, if he had
as
something...
of right this second.
As of right this
What
second.
I had seen on that is all of his advisors were unanimously like, this would be a nightmare, but he might do it anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what I had read. He's like, nightmare.
Just because he says he won't do it right now doesn't mean that it won't change.
The point is that there's stuff there, and there's nothing wrong with investigating it. And that does not mean we're demonizing Russians
Also,
or leading to World War III or whatever the fuck
And
else.
just to grant a point on the other side,
Yeah.
the Democrats don't need to be the one pushing the ball down the court, to use a sports metaphor. It's clear that this has a momentum of its own.
No, the Democrats need to start actually campaigning on pushing the ball up the court, which is a sports metaphor.
The
'Cause
finals are on.
I watch sports because the Cavs and
Go Warriors.
the Warriors, but I like the Warriors because they have more of a backcourt
I like
game.
Kevin Durant
Do
over
you
LeBron.
see? LeBron, I don't like him. And Steve Curry moves all around, all over. Cucks to men. House of Commons is not in session, so yes, Lib Dems have a lot to lose. Corbyn's rhetoric is to stay in the single market. He just doesn't stay it. The only way to guarantee the rights of British nationals and European nationals to stay in the single market is why Lib Dems might go for a coalition with them. I know that that's actually Clegg is.
What would happen if Corbyn wins and they do that coalition? They're just like, screw it, we're going to ignore that whole Brexit stuff. I mean,
I would do that.
I wonder I'm curious what politically what would happen. I don't know enough about.
I mean, the
UK
problem is
politics
that
to
the
know.
Euro leaders have said, like, okay, you voted for it, let's do this. Get the fuck out. Gargelet. Can I make a suggestion? It's not inequality, it's exploitation and theft. Yes, I agree entirely. The liberal, progressive, social democratic program in the last 100 years has been to politely ask for thieves to give back a few dollars of trillions they've stolen from workers' pockets. This while liberals and progressives and social dems support extreme exploitation, even murder of millions of workers in targeted states in the global south. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying there. I buy it. Nelly Girl, my memory of Clinton is her. Remember Clinton speaking to BLM. Yes, the BLM protester. I agree. You're calling from a 425 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Michael.
Hey, what's up?
This is Paul from Renton, Washington.
Hey, Paul, what's on your mind, man?
And when you were talking to Ben, you were talking about he was talking about when his daughter goes to college or later on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my daughter is a librarian in a small Catholic college in Illinois.
Right.
And they have people teaching the new students, the freshman class, how to do research. And
That's
their
great.
basic thought is, well, I'll just go to Wikipedia or all this kind of stuff, and they
Right.
don't even realize that when they're searching for stuff that Google takes and customizes their search to look for stuff that they're kind of going down the path. And
Right.
they don't have any critical thinking skills. They don't know how to use the library. They don't know how to do research. They do a lot of they're familiar with a lot of cut and pasting and all that kind of stuff. So basically every major has to be taught how to do research in their specific major. And and after those classes, they come in all the time looking, how do I look this up? How do I look that up? Where do I go to get this? Where do I go to get that? They're just they're really kind of social media and Facebook, but they don't know how to do it. And they think Google and Wikipedia is the master search engines.
Right.
And
They think they're neutral arbiters too. That's a big danger. Yeah, I
but
appreciate the
schools
call,
don't
man.
teach critical thinking anymore. They don't.
Right.
When I was in school, we used to have political debates all the time in assemblies, and we had campaigns for candidates and all that kind of stuff, and even all the debates and stuff. That's all gone now.
Right. Yeah, it's a big problem.
So the younger generation is kind of losing their ability to.
I don't think it's just a generational thing. I think it's obviously hitting people across the board. But I appreciate the call.
Well,
man.
I think this.
Yeah, no,
I
sorry.
think the schools we had 7 periods in my school. Now there's when I went to school, and I graduated in '66, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had 7 periods, and now they're down to 6, and then they give them a lot more homework, and I think there's just so much demand that on the schools to do tests and stuff. They just leave a lot of the curriculum has really died down.
Right.
They don't know how to read and write cursive anymore, and
I don't know if that's so
I
important.
don't know how important that one is, but I appreciate the call. I thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, the fact about that is that you don't do research the same way anymore. I mean, you don't just Google a question.
Or go to the library.
Or go to the library.
Libraries still have a lot of value.
Libraries have a lot of value,
But technology
but
changes
Technology
research
changes,
methods.
yeah. The way that you use the library to research, you might not have to leave your house.
I mean, look, whatever way you're using, you need critical ability to assess the information where
Right.
it's coming from, and it's and you
That
need
takes
look
time.
no
It's not-
further than any average Dave Rubin fan to know that there is a very deep lack of critical thinking in this country right now. But I agree. It's
But I
not
think there are-
necessarily where it's happening; it's how you're doing it.
Yeah.
I agree.
The problem is to educate about this stuff. It is political. You can't have teachers basically be saying like the New York Times has this sort of bias. It has a
Right.
corporate bias. Like that sort of thing. It's hard to imagine where we're gonna make the space to basically get that information to people who come from backgrounds where they're hostile to it.
Right. You're calling from a 734 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Nathan from Ann Arbor.
Hey, Nathan, what's going on?
I was just hoping to take a moment to talk about mental illness.
Okay.
Personally, I have mental illness, and I'm also in recovery.
Yeah.
And I also attend an elite university.
Right.
And I've just noticed that there's a lot of people who claim to be like open-minded and liberal.
Mm-hmm.
Like supportive of identity politics, but when
Right.
it comes to like actual interaction with people who have mental illness, it seems like they still are judging people's social ability on sort of a meritocratic basis,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
rather than taking into account like inherent disadvantages. And I was just wondering, because I know you've spoken in the past about meritocracy, and I was just wondering if you've ever considered how it plays into some of these identity politic issues. Like, it's okay if you're like a normal gay person without mental illness, or in terms of existing on this campus. But it seems like, people who are looking to, appear open-minded or genuinely wish to be so, they seem to lack that ability when it comes to mental illness.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I've had people that are relatively close to me who, have definitely had, I had a friend who, had sort of in real time ended up kind of developing a really severe case of, schizophrenic. I think that's a really, one of the problems, and I think I'm guilty of this too, is that a lot of things get lumped together. So, like serious depression is a mental illness. And I think a lot of people struggle with things like anxiety and depression. I think that, something I could tell you, dealing in close quarters with somebody who had schizophrenia, there was, actual things where it was like, this isn't going to be the same kind of relationship, But I do think, as a kind of general point of course, and especially when you're talking about things that might, hurt people's ability to have, which is a kind of third category, I guess. If somebody had something like, Asperger's or something, maybe they would have they wouldn't be able to kind of operate with sort of social fluidity, which is important in college, or we make it important in college. So I think that I don't know how to address it, but I think that that's a very legitimate and important thing to bring up in terms of people's range of empathy. Yeah, I do.
Using the descriptor normal is dangerous because there just isn't. Show me the perfect example of the normal person.
Not Sam.
It's not helpful, and
but does
honestly,
that sort of
mental illness, as it's defined, is rather normal. If you're going to
I agree. I think a lot of people have.
It's just very.
But
a wide spectrum of different things. Someone who develops schizophrenia, that's going to inhibit their life. It's
a different dynamic than dealing with anxiety or depression. But I'm just curious with the caller, does that make sense? Like what the response was? Like I don't know. I'm hoping I'm answering your question a bit.
No, it does. I think also, like, at this point in time, like, any sort of identity politic issue doesn't supersede, like, income inequality or the fight for the working class. But I think, like, ideally, it's something that should be addressed.
Yeah, I think that in some ways it's so funny because I'm not saying that critical discourse isn't very important and theories of how these things work and why, but there is this other element that's just like, you're expanding your sphere of of empathy basically. And that's kind of like part of our job as being people. So that's another terrain that people ought to be really considering. And I think that there's also a general importance. I know this guy in the UK, Alistair Campbell, who a lot of people probably hate in the UK, but he was like Tony Blair's, top media strategist. But he's done a lot of work where in his late 20s or early 30s, sometime as a young person, he had like a nervous breakdown and he was institutionalized. Now, that didn't continue obviously, but he talks pretty frankly about continuing ongoing struggles with depression. And he's sort of run these campaigns on, people need to be much more upfront, especially in the ways that most people do. A lot of people deal with and suffer, but aren't, like, they could have all of the social ease in the world, but they might deal with something like depression. And he's been a big advocate of that. And I actually think that there's something to be said there of people in general, not in a kind of overly disclosing or tabloidy way, but being more open about the ways in which I think we all, in different ways and different degrees struggle with these sorts of things. Anyways, I appreciate the call, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's distracting. All right, the last call. You're calling from an 808 area code. Who are you? I mean, it's just, it's kind of an important topic. You're calling from an 808 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Sean calling from Jacksonville, Florida.
Hey, Sean, what's going
How's
on?
it going, Mike?
Yeah, man, what's going on?
Not much. I just wanted to call and chime in on a couple of things you guys were talking about. First, the Bill Maher thing, Bill Maher.
Yeah.
It made me think of a quote that Martin Luther King Jr. when he wrote when he was in jail in Birmingham about the white moderate, and how that was the largest obstacle in the face of people of color, and that's something that he was very adamant about at that time. And I just it made me think about how Bill Maher, who is someone I respect in some ways because he is a comedian, and I understand that he's supposed to be edgy.
Yeah.
But what's problematic to me about it is that it harkens back to like blackface minstrel shows.
Yep.
Like The Joke.
Yep.
He's basically, normalizing prejudices, stereotypes, and negative feelings, towards black people, like what they did with those jokes back in the day. And like minstrel shows were huge. It's not like wasn't deeply ingrained into American culture. So it is very problematic when you have, a white comedian cracking jokes like that.
Right.
And it does, you kind of mentioned it, he is sort of a good old boy in some sense of the ways, like he's a little bit older in age. So in the 1960s, like that's when they stopped with the minstrel shows.
Right.
So, that's, when I heard that joke, it just immediately made me think about that, So that's just something I wanted to mention. Like there's a larger problem there that he's kind of, playing into.
Right.
But I appreciate his apology. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is something that I remember.
He apologized. What did he say? What was his apology?
He did apologize, which I appreciated because he doesn't apologize for anything.
He doesn't
but
apologize.
I think he realized he definitely stepped in it.
Oh, I should. We should note his apology. But anyway, you had another point before we jump?
Yeah, the other point was about the critical thinking thing. It made me think about sort of the lack of critical thinking in the United States and how it's affecting our politics.
Right.
I remember when I was in college, my professor, English professor, taught us about like the 3 levels of thinking. And like type 3 is emotional.
Right.
Like they let their emotions direct their thinking. They're basically reacting to what's around them. They think what is must be right unless it wouldn't be. So they kind of just go with the flow. They're like, following in that crowd. They stay with the crowd.
Right.
And then the type 2 are your critical thinkers who are able to, look at what's going on and point out the deficiencies, see the, the problems, the faults, the contradictions in what's happening in society now. And, what's unfortunate is that they're usually the largest, but they're not looking to create a change so much as to just point out that there is problems going on.
Okay.
And I think that's where most of our country is at right now. And, low-hanging fruit, I feel like, if you look at the Trump administration, that's like their whole thing. They can point out everything that they say is wrong. But what we need is more, type 1 thinkers who are the people who are creating solutions. So not only are they able to see problems, but they're coming up with answers and they're willing to try to find solutions to the problems that are being faced. And I think what happened with the Democratic Party, in a way, is that, or what's happening, and you can, I want you to chime in. I want to hear your thoughts on
Yeah,
this,
we're going to jump in a sec. Yeah.
We're stuck in this level 2 where, like, we can point out everything that Trump is doing wrong and this misstep and that misstep. But what we're missing is that the level 1 thinking, which is trying to create those solutions. And,
I gotta.
Yeah,
I hear you. I gotta run. But I mean, yes, that's another way. That's a really good way of putting the very clear problem with the Democratic Party. There is not forward momentum. There isn't a forward strategy.
It's easier to have that when you have positions of power, though.
But even in positions of power, they don't. It's just not robust, distinct vision for managing the world. That's a really good point. I appreciate the call, man. Thank you. All right, that's it for calls. I'm going to race through a few IMs, and then we're out of here. Sam's de minimis. What really is sad to me is that we Americans believe that if we compromise with capitalists, try to make them happy, they will never come back to further impoverish, starve, and force us into premature deaths as they steal what little we have left. Yes.
Laissez-faire capitalism has been near death in this country before. In the 30s.
Yeah.
So, like, it can happen again.
Can happen.
What it takes to get there is
I don't
the
know.
other
It's gonna
thing,
take
though.
a lot. Hypnotic genes. I never pictured Trump as Frank Underwood. To me, Trump is like if Michael Scott from The Office became president. Oh, that's interesting. At least he's nice. That's true. Reagan in the money. Greetings, MR. So yesterday, my hometown. I'm sorry, dude. I can't. Okay, my hometown of Portland had a big old meet and greet downtown regarding freedom of stabbing and happening last Friday. It was pretty interesting. Unions were there, Antifa was there, multiple socialist movements were there, and of course, the freedom-loving patriots showed up too.
Awesome that unions were there.
And it's awesome that unions were there. Basically, it was a pro-Trump, don't tread on me, pull myself up on my own bootstraps crowd in the park and other groups on the other side. They had serious figures with names like Baked Alaska and Base Stickman speaking. It was 1 part freedom rally, 3 parts clown car sideshow. Apparently, the pro-Trump crew had a plethora of space and exploration enthusiasts amongst them. Andy Pants. Okay, no, that's about... All right, you know what? Letter.
F.
I submit. Fart face. Does Michael have a Ben Shapiro voice? He does sound like a 16-year-old whose voice hasn't dropped yet.
It's like the thing about the left is they don't understand the historical task of Western civilization.
That's Ben Shapiro. Kelly, letter.
D.
D. Dystopian con. Oh, look at you. Did you see ahead? Kelly's right. The cuck stuff is totally played out. Yeah, but that's actually what people don't understand is that's what's making it funny again. It's gotten to such a level of play out that it's funny. Bob Flav. We kill millions of people with our bombs, but we can't say the N-word on TV. There's something terribly wrong here. I see wrong extrapolation. I would focus on the stop killing millions of people with our bombs thing. There is a White House right now with people who would love to keep killing millions of people with their bombs and say that word. So I don't really get your point. Bill Maher did say, just to really, this was a pretty unequivocal apology. Friday night was always the worst night of sleep because I'm up reflecting on things I should or shouldn't have said on my show. Last night was a particularly long night for me as I regret the word I used in the banter of a live moment. The word was offensive and I regret saying it, and I am very sorry. Well, there you go. Matt.
M.
I'm going to say that's, militant apathy. Actually, that gamer stuff Matt was doing is very relevant. I think it's the nexus of a surge in those alt-right groups. I think you're right. My kid plays the MMOs, and in the games, chats are always racist and pro-Republican. I had to turn it off when he plays. Mar thinks he can get a pass because he likes to kick it with black woman, Nabra. But the cons are angling to get him off air because even though they say niggers 3 times a day, every day. Yeah, that's also like any Republican that's on getting Bill Maher to lose his job. Get the fuck out of here. Nick from Manitoba. Kelly, what's the color of your dog? I have a Samiand. He's 4 and he's a big white Samoan. Well, he said he didn't spell it like that. He has a big white fluffy fluff of a pooch. Does your dog know any cool tricks? Do you apply a Marxist framework to train your dog? Let's talk dog talks, friends. Stay sweet, MR Beauties. I think you could just say what color.
She's brown, white, and black. And she's pretty good, but she's also kind of bad. I don't know. I'm not real consistent. I don't like being mean to the dog, which is bad for the dog.
Okay.
Well, you got to train them because then they'll know. And I do it to a certain point, but then I'm a little too intelligent.
Bush and Chains. It's good to be back and experience the glorious bumper music that is Michael Monday. That said, all you namby-pamby Republican light hill shills better stand back from now on. A real progressive just took over the reins. This will be messy. Oh, is that you? He's talking about himself. Bush and Chains. Bush and Chains has returned. And the final Well, he literally just returned. The final IM of the day, Neff. Why is cursive important? Original source material from before the computer age were written in cursive, so students need to be able to read cursive in order to be able to use said sources. Example, our founding documents themselves are written in cursive.
You can find, if you look hard enough, you can find print versions of a lot of that stuff.
I wish I knew French so that I could read. It could have done better in an English lit major.
It's a waste of class money.
I wish I spoke Indian, I wish I spoke Sanskrit so I could talk with the
Cursive
Indian
is a total waste of class time.
All right, everybody. We'll be back live tomorrow. Thanks so much.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught.